Hi, Kevin. I'm going to turn the program over to you so you can get us started anytime.
Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody to the 69th annual virtual Muck conference for the first time. See, we have about 65 people joining us. First, I'd like to introduce Dr. Clarence Swanton from the University of Guelph, and he's going to give us an update on weed management on both carrots and onions. So if you're here for the carrots, you also get an onion update as well. So we'll turn it over to Clarence.
There you go. Thank you very much, Kevin, and welcome everyone. Thank you for taking time to listen to my presentation this afternoon. We're going to talk about, as Kevin mentioned, about carrots and onions, a little bit on onions. And in this presentation, I'm going to begin with the carrots and talk about some of the new recommendations that I'm really comfortable with. And then we will highlight some new projects that we've been doing and talk about both carrots and onions, particularly from the new treatments that we've been trying out. So we've been focused on the control of ligneron-resistant weed species. This is a problem that is not going to go away, particularly when we're in a situation where we have very tight rotations. And so it continues to be a very significant problem. And, you know, the struggle is real. It's hard to control this plant because you have a plant that can produce 34,000 up to 100,000 seeds on a per plant basis. And as well, it tends to germinate, comes at you throughout the season, and has fairly long longevity in the soil seed bank. So you have to appreciate that that type of weed is going to put a lot of pressure on the chemistry and the manual control measures that you undertake. So what have we been doing in 2020 and before? So I'm going to highlight some treatments that we've been working on for several years and just show you some of the work that we've been doing. Now I'm going to break this out by treatment, okay? So we're going to talk at the very beginning what we've been doing and kind of walk you through and make some points as we go along. So we've been using Visagard in terms of pre-treatments, and this is the rate that we've been doing our treatments with. So I'm just talking about what we've been doing on the station. We've been using about 2.83 liters per acre. Now, with every pre-treatment here, there are some issues that can arise. Clearly, you know, you're well familiar with the fact that it requires rainfall for activation. So that can be a problem if we miss the rainfall. If you get too much rain, you can flush that down pretty quickly amongst the seed because the seed is very shallow, and that can have an impact on seedling emergence and survival. And we also know that soil type plays a role. And I just want to profile this because if you have variable soil types, so most of our work is done, well, pretty much all of it is done on the high organic soils. But if you have soil that is a field that's variable in soil rates, things can go wrong with some of these pre-treatments. I just want to show you this. This is Zidua peroxysulfone. On this side here is the pre-rate, and on this side is the post-rate. Night and day in terms of crop tolerance. And we see the same type of response in terms of dual, okay? Pre-rate here, this is less than 2% organic matter. And you can see here, the survival rate here is totally different, very much stark contrast. So just a point, and we've also used Zidua in onions. This is work done at Bradford, and here's a post-treatment with Zidua, and look what happens when we put it on pre. So my point here being that if you're using pre-emergence herbicides in any way, certainly with these crops, you want to be very careful about the variability in soil type. Now, the next stage after your pre, we focused on the stale seed bed. So that's prior to any carrot emergence. And we used partner, and we used it at a rate of 429 mils per acre. And that is, so you're in a delicate situation here where you're trying to, it's a race, it's a horse race now, because you've got the carrot seedlings trying to emerge, but you've got thousands of weed species coming up at the same time. And whatever one emerges first and survives is going to win. And if it's not carrots, it's going to create a significant problem for you. So this is a really delicate time here. But there are some things to think about in terms of partner, okay? We know again that heavy rains can flush that down and reduce seedling emergence. One important aspect is that it is effective on small seedling pigweed. If pigweed gets too large, even this treatment won't take it down. And there are some reports of resistant pigweed species to partner in Ontario, mainly in the Essex and Kent area. So resistance there is a possibility as well. Now, if we've done it right and we've got the carrots up and we've got a fairly clean seed bed, what can you do now at this stage to that the seedlings will survive? So this is a list of treatments that I'm really comfortable with that can be applied at the bunny ear to one leaf stage of carrots, okay? Zidua, we've been applying it, this is the rate, so this is a low rate of Zidua, okay? That's 71 mils per acre. Prowl, 1.5 liters per acre. Dual at 480 mils, and Blazer at 31 mils. Now, when you're dealing with the bunny ears, you've got to be very careful about any environmental stress, okay? Because every herbicide is going to represent a stress to that delicate seedling. So you want to be sure that the seedlings are not stressed either from windburn. If you had a sandstorm go through, that would create problems, or if it was dry, those types of issues would also create problems. I also recommend at this stage that you keep your weed management really simple. Don't be tank mixing, because there's always a possibility of interaction. So in the studies that I've done, we keep this down. We're only putting on one of these products at a time. Okay. The other thing I will note here is Blazer. I want to draw your attention to Blazer, which is sold in the soybean market. This is an extremely low rate of Blazer. So this is well below the labeled rate in soybeans. This is specific for control of pigweed seedlings, okay? And so I want you to think about, and it's fairly safe. This is safer than Goal at this stage. So when it's early stages, you want to use Blazer. As we move to a later stage, then we could switch to Goal, and I'll show you that data in a moment. I want you to think of Blazer as controlling pigweed species that you can't even see, okay? Because this is really, we want to get it on early, just as the pigweeds are coming above ground, and it will take out, it should take out pigweed that is in up to maybe 1 to 2 leaf, but not beyond that. So you want to do it early. You don't want to see the pigweed. That's the safest route with this product. This is an example of what Blazer at the later stages would do at that rate. And you can see that it does cause burn, probably sets this back for a day or two, but you have plenty of power to take out, to take out tiny seedlings here, but not the big ones. Now, at the 1 to 3 leaf stage of carrots, this is when you can start to introduce tank mixtures. And we have tested Blazer in combination with Linearon and Blazer in combination with Sencor, and been very, very successful with those treatments over the years. And so that works. So this Blazer, we've been using the formulation of Blazer, an older formulation, but Blazer Ultra here will work as effective as the traditional Blazer. Now, when you get into the later post, the 3 to 6 leaf stage, you could come back with another application of Zidua, which is peroxysulfone, or Dual. And this is when you can introduce Goal. at 100 mils per acre. Now, goal here in carrots, this is a 60 gram active per hectare rate. So that's half the rate that you use on onions, okay? So be well aware of that. It's not the full rate of goal. This is the half rate compared to the onion goal rate, okay? And this is the timing when you can put this goal on and have, as I mentioned earlier, it's safer than, it's a little more, you want the plant a little bit larger for the goal treatments. And you can also come back with Zidua or Dual that will help extend the residual nature of these products, because the rates that we're using are well within the overall dose rate for these products. Now, we have tested Goal tank mixed with Linearon at this rate, and there's absolutely no problem. We found no problem with that combination. We have not tank mixed it with Zidua or Dual. Okay, so just be aware of that. It is possible that that combination would work as well, but we haven't tested it. But we do have, I am comfortable with the Goal and Linearon at this particular stage of 3 to 6 leaf carrots. So if you put all that together, this is what it might look like. So you're putting down Guisegard as a pre-emergence treatment. As a stale seed bed, you're controlling any weeds that arise with Partner. You would apply Zidua at the bunny ear stage, followed by a shot of Blazer to keep back any emerging pigweed at that time. Then you could follow that up with a Blazer plus Linearon post at the 1 to 3 leaf stage. And then you could start to tank mix in Goal and Linearon post 3 to 6 leaf stage. So that's what that might look like. And here's an example of carrots where we use Guisegard, followed by Partner, followed by Zidua, Blazer, early shot of Blazer, then Blazer and Linearon, and Linearon and Goal. Here's an example where we applied a later application of Zidua. So it was very similar treatments, Guisegard, Partner, Prowl applied here in the bunny ear stage, Blazer applied to control the pigweed that you don't see, and Blazer plus Linearon. And then we applied a later application at the same rate as we had used at the 89 grams active rate, and then the Goal plus Linearon. Now in these treatments, we're using about 6 different modes of action, okay? And clearly you have to recognize that as we narrow the rotation, the opportunities here between carrots and onions for further development of resistance is a very real possibility. The only 2 routes that you've got. One route is to mix up to use as many modes of action as you can in a season. And the second method is to, at this point at least, I think we can base our resistance management around these group 15 herbicides. So the group 15 herbicides are things such as Dual, Zidua, and Frontier is also an example of that. And the reason that I say that is at the current moment, we do not have any resistant weed species in Ontario to these group 15. They are very effective on pigweed. And on globally, there are some examples here of pigweed species where resistance has developed, but there are only 7 on a global basis at the present moment. And compared to some other herbicides, that's a very, very low number. So that's a management tool that we have. We mix it up as much as we can to keep as many different modes of action, and eventually, and you do need to count on manual weed control as well. So that's what we've done. That's where we're really comfortable on the carrot story, where we're at. And now I want to share with you some of the work that we did for the first time. And I want to stress that from here on in the presentation, we're talking about 1-year data. 1-year data, 1-year location code. Keep that in mind, all right? So we had some trials on carrots and onions. And what we did, we were testing pyridate. And pyridate is Lintegran. It's an old product that's been around, but and it's a group 6 product, but it's in the same family as Partner. But on the label, on the label, excuse me there, sorry, it's effective on pigweed species, common chickweed, galansoga, lamb's quarters, nightshade. So it's going to fit in very nicely in our carrot, in the carrot world for sure. So we tested this. Now carrots are more tolerant to this product than our onions, okay? Just to give you an example, in the carrot story, we tested 300 to 900 grams active per hectare, whereas in onions, we basically half those rates or more. Here, we tested much lower rates, and we did split applications of those treatments. So that's one thing to note. So we're testing this product pretty intensively, and we have support from the company as well to continue that work in 2021. So in 2020, at one location, 1 year's data, we didn't have any crop injury. We tested some different formulations of pyridate. And the interesting thing is we mixed this pyridate at a rate, this is kind of a middle rate that we tested here. We mixed it with Zidua, we mixed it with Dual, and we mixed it with pendimethalin, and we applied it at the bunny ear stage, and we didn't have a problem. And that's kind of neat because I think we could use a treatment like that so we could get that treatment out there and on the carrots very early. There's no residual from this product, but it would help us control any potential emerging pigweed at that early stages as well. And when we examined the carrot yields from this past year, we did not see any effect of the herbicides on the treatment yields. So good news there. That's all very good work there. On onions, as I mentioned, we used lower doses. We split these lower doses and repeated the applications over time. When we did that, we could improve the tolerance because as the plant grew larger, it was able to tolerate better. And again, with this, it does look promising as well. And the onion yields did not differ with herbicide treatment. We also tested on onions a product called Fierce. Now, Fierce is registered in field crops. It's a tank mixture of Chateau, but this is Chateau here, flumioxazin, and this is Zidua again. So you have two groups here, herbicide groups working. And we applied this treatment at various stages, again, just to test the range and how early we could go on. And we tested it over a range of rates as well. We did, in this last year, we did think we saw a little bit of injury here with a high rate pre. Again, the pre seemed to be a cautionary statement associated with that. But we did observe excellent crop tolerance when we applied this product post-emergence at the 3 to 4 leaf stage of onions. So again, Fierce looks like a potential tank mixture that could be very, very useful in onions. And so Fierce could come into onions, and pyridate could be very useful on the carrot side as well. So some very encouraging treatments there, I think, as we move forward into 2021. And with that, I want to thank you. I want to thank the Bradford Co-op and the growers and the MAFRA and the staff at the Muck Station for the great help, and the University of Guelph. Thanks for listening to my story. Thank you.
Thank you, Clarence. If anyone has a question for Clarence, either they can type it in the chat or, oh, here we have one from Dennis. Which formulation of pyridate did you use on the carrots? Was the EC safe?
Yes. Yeah, we used 2 formulations, a wettable powder and an EC, and both of them were safe. So the company will make a decision based on this data, what formulation they're going to go with. And I think that it also opens up sort of a whole area for them to explore that further. But right now, for the plans for 21, it appears that we have both formulations back in the 21 trials.
Okay. Any other questions for Clarence? Okay, thank you, Clarence.
Thank you.
Moving on, next we have a presentation from Kristen Obeid and Dennis Van Dyke from OMAFRA. Their topic today is what's the best herbicide program for managing resistant pigweed? And I'll turn it over to Kristen. I believe she's going to start. We can't hear you.
Okay, there we go.
All right, you're unmuted now, I guess.
Yes. Hello, everybody. Thanks for inviting myself and Dennis to come and talk about some work we completed this past summer. As you know, we've been working on this herbicide-resistant pigweed problem in carrot production systems since 2012, with a lot of people contributing to getting new registrations for the growers. So since 2012, we have received a couple of new registrations in carrots, Blauel, H2O, applied pre, as well as Dual, applied both pre and post. So Dennis and I thought, let's try it out on a large scale and see where these new products would fit and what would become the best program that we could put together for carrot producers with these new registrations. Next slide, please. Okay, so we all know our biggest challenge ahead is going to be these amaranthus species or pigweed species of weeds. Of the top 15 resistant weeds worldwide, 4 are amaranthus species. Number 4 is Palmer amaranth worldwide. Number 9 is water hemp. Number 11 is smooth pigweed, and number 13 is redroot pigweed. In Ontario, we have 4 pigweed species resistant to herbicides. We have water hemp, which is resistant to groups 2, 5, 9, and 14. We have redroot pigweed in Ontario, which is resistant to groups 2, 5, 6, and 7. We have green pigweed resistant to groups 2, 5, and 7. And we have smooth pigweed resistant to group 6. So water hemp is resistant now to 4 modes of action, or what we call 4-way resistance in Ontario. So we do have fields. Water hemp has been found in 126 fields within Ontario, and it's an emerging problem. In Quebec, they just documented this amaranth species to be resistant to also group 27 herbicides. So my point here is that this problem, like Clarence says, is not going away. It's only going to become more and more challenging with more of the amaranthus species showing up to be multiple resistant in various production systems across Ontario. The first case of group 14 resistance was in 2018. The first case of a group 9 or glyphosate resistance was documented in 2014. The first case of group 7 resistance in 1999. The first case of group 2 in 1998. And group 5 resistance was first documented way back in 1977. So you can see over time, more and more resistance to different groups of herbicides. Next slide, please. So here, these are pictures back when we first started documenting the linearon resistant problem in carrots back in 2012. You can see here, growers had to resort to hoeing or weed wicking with glyphosate and removing those weeds right from the field. I just wanted to bring up these slides because when you're hoeing or when you're weed wicking, you cannot leave those weeds in the field. They will still have viable seeds that will return to the seed bank. And depending on what amaranthus species you're talking about, these weeds can produce anywhere on average from 100,000 to 300,000 and somewhere up to 1 million seeds per plant. So once you have this problem in your field and you let it go to seed, you're just going to have it for decades and decades to come. Next slide, please. Okay, so what do we have currently registered for this to solve this problem in muck soils? Well, right now, so we have the two new ones, the group 3 Prowl and the group 15 Dual. Both can be applied pre. We also have Gezigard and Partner pre. Post products are Sencor, but it can only be followed by Lorax pre, Lorax, AIM in between rows, as well as Dual 2 Magnum. But you can only apply the Dual either pre or post emergent. In mineral soils, you also have Treflan, which has to be pre-plant incorporated, but you do not have Partner pre. Next slide, please. So what did we do? So on a 6-acre carrot field on muck soil, the carrots variety Belgrado were planted on May the 31st, 2020. The grower used his existing sprayer to apply the treatments in half boom plots. Each plot was about 110 by 7 meters squared, and they were randomized across the field with each treatment replicated 4 times. And here are our treatments. So our pre-emergence treatments went on June 1st. Treatment 1 included Gezigard at 2.8 liters per acre and Dual 2 Magnum at 0.6 liters per acre. Treatment 2 included Gezigard at 2.8 liters, Dual 2 Magnum at 0.6, and Prowl H2O at 2.6 liters. And then treatment 3 and 4 pre were the same, with Prowl at 2.6 liters and Partner at 0.4 liters. Then June 30th, we had to apply basically an emergency post-emergent treatment, because we had such high pigweed pressure and the carrots were so very small still. We thought we might actually lose our experiment. So we went in with Lorax at the 1.8 liter per acre rate. And then only 2 days later, the remaining treatments, post-emergent treatments, were applied to treatments 3 and 4. Treatment 3 was Gezigard only at 1.5 liters per acre, and then treatment 4 was Gezigard and Dual together. Next slide, please. So in this trial, we collected a lot of data. We collected carrot stand counts and weed efficacy based on quarter meter square weed counts at 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, and 49 days after application. We also took carrot leaf stages at 28, 35, and 49 days after those first pre-emergent applications on June the 30th. And then carrots from 3 1-meter sections were harvested from each experimental unit on November the 10th. The harvest assessments were graded, weighed, and counted to determine the marketable yield. Next slide, please. So here's a look at what the pigweed pressure was like in this field. You can see in the top picture there, the carrots below the pigweed canopy. And this was the point at 28 days after the pre-emergence applications where we applied the full rate of Lorax. So the 1.8 liters per acre. You can see why we thought we might lose the trial. Next slide, please. And here are the results after that rescue treatment. You can see all the dead pigweed carcasses in the field, and the carrot stand is looking pretty good. Sorry, in the previous slide, I should have mentioned that at that 28 days after application, I went in and I took leaf tissue samples to determine which herbicide groups of pigweeds in the field were resistant to. And all of those samples at 28 days after application came back as group 5 resistant only. And then after this rescue treatment was applied, the full rate of Lorax, I took whatever pigweed plants were remaining, I took leaf tissue from there and I had the genetic profile done to determine the resistance, and all the remaining pigweed in the field came back as resistant to groups 5 and 7, which would make sense. So the Lorax didn't control those that were resistant. So this grower in the future, the group 5 and 7 or multiple resistant pigweed species will begin to dominate this population. Okay, next slide, please. And now I'm going to pass it over to Dennis to talk more about the results.
Thanks, Kristen. So let's get into what we actually saw. So you saw the picture before, some of the good work that the post-treatment did. you can see here sort of the differences as well. So we had that Lorax rescue treatment, but we also followed it up 2 days later with a Gessigard post treatment. And this is what caused all this burning you see here in these plots. You can see the distinct difference, right? All the green just has the Lorax at the full rate, and all the burning here has the Gessigard at a lower rate applied post, and that's where we saw that burning and the carrot damage. If we look at an overview that we took, this was after all the post treatments had been applied. So you can see here the different plots and all the results from there. So just going through what we actually applied, a June 1st pre-emergent, right? So we, as Kristen mentioned, we had the Prowl here applied to these bigger plots. They're both the same. And then we had the addition of Prowl H2O to the red blocks, in addition to Gessigard and Dual applied pre. Moving into June 30th, we had that blanket Lorax application to the whole plot, and then our post emergent applications on July 2nd. So this is, you can obviously see some of the stunting, the burning that we saw with the post. Obviously the Gessigard and the Dual along with Prowl with Lorax post looks a lot healthier, a lot greener. The stand, yeah, just overall all healthier. We definitely saw some stunting and setbacks from that Gessigard post application. Getting into what we actually saw in our counts, we look here, our post application of Lorax was after this assessment. So after the green bars, you can see it really falls off the table here with the blue accounts. So at our 2-week assessment after our pre, you can see that the Gessigard Dual and Prowl H2O treatment here had much lower pigweed compared to Prowl H2O and partner on its own. So we're definitely seeing some different results when we see the similar results here on the green. So the Gessigard Dual Prowl H2O, along with the Gessigard and Dual treatments, had lower pigweed pressure compared to the Prowl H2O and partner applied pre in this case. No differences afterwards. Overall, our Gessigard Dual and Prowl H2O pre program had a significantly lower pressure. Move on to carrot development. You can see in that picture that we showed also that this is sort of a graphical version of that. We took assessments of the carrot leaf stage, so kind of growth stages after that post application. So you can see finally at basically 50 days after our pre-emergence applications, we're seeing better growth, overall healthier plant with the Gessigard Dual Prowl and the Lorax, as opposed to these two Gessigard or Gessigard and Dual treatments that we applied. So the Gessigard and the Gessigard and Dual are what's given us that reduction in the plant stands, not the stands, sorry, the reduction in the plant growth. We also did a sort of overhead. So to visualize this, let me see if I can get back to my pointer. So sort of walking through, you can see here the spray row in the middle of the screen there. To the left of that is our Gessigard and Dual pre-treatment with Lorax post, and to the right of that spray row on the right side is our Gessigard and Dual and Prowl pre with Lorax post. So you can see the growth at this point as we get further into the field, and coming up, you should be able to see where our first treatments here, a definite difference. That little yellow patch was a little bit of nut sedge that was well controlled by that Lorax application. On the left-hand side, here's the Gessigard and Dual post treatment. On the right-hand side is the Gessigard treatment. We're almost coming up to our third block here, where we get back into Gessigard and Dual pre and Gessigard and Dual and Prowl pre. Right here is the line, getting back into that just Lorax post application. See, the crop looks a little healthier. The rows are a little bit filled in, and we saw that sort of throughout the rest of the season as we went along. So what does that look like in terms of yield? Statistically, it's a little all over the place. So statistically not any different in yield, but you know, a healthier crop in theory, we would expect to see an increase in yield. You see here, this treatment had numerically the highest yield. but no differences in percent marketable as well. So there didn't seem to be any significant root impacts with any of the post applications. When we take into account yield and cost, so this is the same yield graph here. So these are our yield numbers right here. And then also take into account sort of a cost per acre estimate. You can see, of course, the more applications we're going to do, the more expensive the program is. But you're also, in theory, getting less weed competition, and a less weed competition, healthier crop, you're getting more yield. In theory, I guess the more blue there is, the better bang for your buck the program's going to give you, right? You pay less and you get more yield, better bang for your buck. So in theory, a standard Gesagard duo with Lorax turned out pretty well in our trial. Getting into sort of some overall conclusions that we saw, no real difference in carrot stand counts. So in terms of, stunting, emergence, setting the crop back, we didn't see any significant impacts to any of the treatments. So the Prowl, Partner, Gesagard dual Prowl, nothing seemed to really significantly set the crop back, which is good. Our carrot leaf stage was better for the Gesagard dual Prowl at 21 days after application. So a little bit less weed competition. They seem to get ahead a little better. Less pigweed overall in that treatment as well that we found. That was 2 weeks and sort of a month after application. And no real differences in yield that we could pull out, although we did see some better overall crop health, which you expect would translate into yield long term. So our pre-application, I've mentioned a couple of times, Gesagard dual Prowl, followed by a post full rate of Lorax, provided our best weed control in this case. More competitive, more healthy carrots. It was also pretty evident visually, which I showed. A little caveat, I guess, it kind of depends on what species you're dealing with. In this case, we had mostly pigweed, had a little bit of nutsedge here and there and a bit of a patch, and then a little bit of lamb's quarters. So Prowl, of course, is going to give you way better lamb's quarter control as opposed to pigweed. So if you have a little bit more of a lamb's quarter population, you might get a better bang for your buck out of Prowl. But nevertheless, even adding Prowl to our pre-treatment of Gesagard and dual gave us an added boost and benefit in the end. With that, thanks our funding, Horticultural Crops Ontario provided the funding for this trial. Special thanks to our grower that helped collaborate on this and cooperate with us. It was greatly appreciated. Thanks all the summer staff for taking all the plant stands and the counts, and Josh Moisans as well for all the drone footage that we had. With that, also a little, I guess, bittersweet news on Lorax. Lorax in general just went through a PMRA reevaluation and the decision just came back. So carrots are still on the label, which is the good news. The bad news is that they're cutting the rate back basically by 50%. So whereas before, our high rate was 1.8 liters, now your maximum rate, if you're just doing a post-emergence application, is right here, 0.91 liters per acre. So good news, it's still on the label. Bad news, in theory, we can't use as much, which may in turn lead to more resistance issues, of course. But if you are using the pre and post emergence, your maximum application, of course, 1.4 liters per acre. There's a little bit of a phase in with this change. So the label changes have to be in place at the end of November 2022, which means that they'll probably be in place for 2023 growing season. So next 2 years, they are not in place, but going forward, 2023 looks like we'll have a reduced amount of Lorax we can use. Hopefully by then, some of these newer products will come through the pipeline for us. With that, contact information is there for Kristen and myself, and any questions.
Hey, Dennis, we do have a question in the chat. Kevin asked, did you apply a sticker with the Lorax treatment?
So because we were going full rate, no, we didn't add any assist or anything like that, just because we didn't want to put it over the top. So just a straight full rate.
All right, thank you, Dennis.
Oh, yeah.
Are there any other questions? Sorry, Tyler.
Oh, it's all good.
I'd just like to make a comment. It's really good to add those new modes of actions into the program. So your prowl and your dual. I think Clarence showed there too in his work that adding those other groups will help us manage resistance not only to this weed species, but other weed species. For example, lamb's quarters is resistant to group 5 and many, many other cropping systems in Ontario. So that could be one to watch for sooner rather than later in this cropping system.
Kristen, I also, about resistant pigweeds and getting them tested. So if people think they have a problem, or is there a way that they could send you samples?
Oh,
that,
absolutely. We can get out a newsletter article that you can send around and put on the website. Yeah, no, we have testing for free. So all you need to do is contact me and I'll send you a sample collection kit. It's really, really easy. You just need to take one leaf about the size of a loonie from about 10 different plants in the field, put them in some envelopes and ship them to the lab. We'll get that tested for you. It's very concerning, I will say, in terms of all the different pigweed species in multiple cropping systems that we're dealing with this issue. Similar issue is just starting in potatoes that you guys have been dealing with for a while. However, they have a lot of other herbicide groups and options to use at different timings as compared to you. So they'll probably be able to hold it off for a bit longer. So, but yeah, no, please, if you suspect, get your weeds tested so you know what you're dealing with. Like in this example, in this plot, you could see that we did the one initial sampling, came back just as group 5, but then the remaining after the herbicide application came back as both group 5 and 7. So you can sample very, very early in the cropping season and then later season to get what I like to call a resistance profile for your field. So you should get one for every field because it can be different.
Right, good information. We just had one comment here. Someone said they have had good luck with doubling up the LI 700. So lots of different options, I think, for people. I don't know if I double up the LI 700 with a full rate of Lorax, but there's also the people also want maybe not to hurt the carrots, but you want to hurt the weeds and not hurt the carrots, or you know, might need a little bit of damage to your carrots to get some control if you've got either heavy pressure or some resistant problems. So, okay, unless there's anything else, we'll move on. Our next presenter will be Tyler Blauel, and Tyler is going to give an IPM update, a year in review, and also our plans for the 2021 season. I'll turn it over to Tyler.
All right, thanks, Kevin. Sorry, 1 second. I'll just turn on my video here. Oh, I can't seem to do that right now, but as long as you can see the screen here.
We're good. We can see the screen.
Okay, perfect. So thanks, Kevin. My name is Tyler Blauel. I am the IPM program coordinator here at the Muck station. And today I just wanted to go over a IPM update for 2020 and touch on 2019 just a little bit as well. So our objectives for the program are to provide growers in the marsh with scouting services, to provide them with disease and insect forecasting, identify and diagnose diseases, insects, and weeds in their fields, provide the growers with timely, accurate IPM information, and also ways that they can best access that information. And also we are continually trying to update and improve the program. So when we look at all of our scouting data after the year, we divide all the fields up into about 5 sections, the north, east, central, south, and west. And everyone who is a part of the IPM program will receive this agrophone. And the agrophone has up-to-date weather information, insect and disease pressure around the marsh currently, recommendations on products that are registered for control of these certain diseases and insects, any newly registered products, disease forecasting, and also any upcoming events. And also, this program is made possible by our funding partners, the Bradford Co-op, chemical companies, our participating growers, and the Ontario Agri-Food Innovation Alliance, which is the partnership between the University of Guelph and OMAFRA. So just to touch on 2019 a little bit, May was a fairly cool month, and July was a little bit hotter again. And overall, the season was quite dry, except for a decent amount of rain we got in October. And when we looked at carrots, every field that we sampled had some level of forking or splitting, and this can be caused by nematodes, pythium, and also abiotic factors. And there was also high incidence of cavity spot. And when we looked over at the insects, weevil damage was fairly low. However, we did see quite a bit of rust fly damage. And this was probably due to fairly constant rust fly activity, especially during the middle to late September, when we saw populations rise quite a bit. And in 2019, the onions, every field that we were scouting had some level of stem phyllium. And when we look at insects, onion megafly numbers were pretty consistent with previous years, and thrips populations were quite low. And now moving on to 2020 and the season we just had. So May, September, and October, those were fairly cool months. You probably remember early May, we experienced some frost. And then in July, it was once again a bit of a warmer month. And in terms of rainfall or precipitation, May, June, and July, they were quite dry months. And everyone, I'm sure, remembers how much rain we received at the beginning of August. And October was once again a little bit dry. And when we look at the weather on another daily scale here, max and min temperatures and the daily precipitation, you can see that amount of rain that we received in early August. So at the Muck station here, we do have a diagnostic lab. Last year, we received 67 samples. These samples were submitted by scouts, industry reps, growers. And when we look at these samples, it just helps us confirm what diseases are there in the fields right now, or what kind of damage we're seeing right now in the field. It helps us determine first occurrences of things like stem phyllium. And these services are available to anyone. So last year and this year, we do have COVID-19 health protocols in place. So if you do ever have a sample, please just give us a call ahead of time, and we can get in contact with you and figure out a time for you to drop off your sample. In terms of grower participation, in 2020, we scouted a similar number of acres to 2019, and the actual number of fields that we scouted just dropped a little bit. All right, now moving on to carrots. So at our harvest assessment, the main carrot diseases we found were cavity spot and forking, among others. Cavity spot and forking, they were both found in all of the fields that we assessed, with a little bit higher amount of crown gall than we've seen in some years as well. In terms of carrot insects, the main ones that we're always looking at are the carrot rust fly and carrot weevil, as well as the aster leafhopper. So when we look at cumulative carrot weevil traps, well, counts per trap for the various regions, all regions basically reached that 1.5 weevil per trap threshold at some point. And two of the regions, the central and the south, reached that 5 weevil per trap threshold. And when we combine all those numbers over the year and compared to previous years as well, we saw that the number of cumulative weevil counts were lower this year and last year. Well, I should say 2020 and 2019 compared to some of the more previous recent years. And with weevil damage being so low, we did not see any weevil damage in 4 of the regions that we assessed, and just a little bit on the west side. And when we looked at carrot rust fly numbers over the growing season, if you remember the high activity of rust fly that we saw at the end of 2019, that kind of resulted in high emergence early on in the season in 2020. But those populations tended to dwindle off as the season progressed. And in saying that, at our harvest assessment, we did not find any rust fly damage in 4 of our regions and just a little bit on the east side. And when we look at average weevil and rust fly damage over the past few years, weevil damage has gone down quite a bit. And this is likely due to timely Rymon applications, possibly, as well as another insecticide, Xrel. Both these products have been very good at controlling this insect. And again, 2019, for rust fly, we had quite a bit of damage, and in 20, we had very low. And when we look at aster leafhopper numbers over the season in 2020, their numbers varied between or among regions. And these numbers are pretty consistent with previous years. All right, now moving on to onions. So the main onion diseases that we experienced in 2020 were stem phyllium and pink root. Although we did have some conducive days for downy mildew, we actually did not find any downy mildew in any of our scouted fields. And this may be due to also timely applications of protectant fungicides, hopefully. And we also did not see any botrytis leaf blight as well. So stem phyllium, once again, was found in all of the fields that we scouted. Pink root was found in a large majority of the fields that we were scouting. And this is probably due to that dry early part of the season. And purple blotch, which is alternaria, that was often found in conjunction with stem phyllium. So for stem phyllium, this is just showing the average stem phyllium per field over the season. And you can tell that stem phyllium really grew in fields throughout the month of August. And this can be pretty similar to past years as well. All right, so moving on to the onion insects, onion maggot fly. We first predicted that we'd see onion maggot fly around May 25th. That's also when we first trapped the insect. Its population throughout the year was pretty consistent to other years, fairly low. There were a couple spikes in the south at the end of July and also at the beginning of August in the central region. And in terms of onion thrips, the populations we saw in 2020 were a little bit bigger, or sorry, a little bit higher than what we saw in 2019. And none of the fields that we were scouting surpassed the 3 thrips per leaf threshold. And celery. So we scouted 2 celery fields in 2020. We did see a couple of diseases, some leaf blights and leaf curl. Both these diseases were quite minimal, and at the end of the season, the celery crop looked pretty good. And in terms of celery insects, we did see aster leafhopper, some tarnished plant bug, and very minimal carrot weevil. And all of this insect damage was also very minimal. So this IPM report is available in our 2020 Green Book. This year, similar to last year, the growers that are a part of the program will receive the Green Book. The scouts will probably go around and drop off the Green Books once again. And these Green Books also have all of our other research reports from 2020 as well. So in 2021, our scouting price is going to be the same as last year. We will be scouting twice a week again, and I will be sending out the AgriPhone report twice a week as well on Mondays and Thursdays. And you can sign up for scouting today or tomorrow, or sometime before the season starts, but the earlier the better. You can give me a call at the station or my email. I'm sure most of you have it. More detail is also available at our website. And you can also reach me and keep track of things at our Twitter account, Muck IPM. So with that, I would like to thank all the growers for participating in the program, all the scouts for scouting all of our fields, and all of our sponsors. If we could just all take a minute here, and sorry, I'm going to try to launch a survey. Thank you. So if everyone could just take a minute and fill out this survey here. Basically, it is about IPM practices and how you prefer to access IPM information. So if we all just can take a minute and fill that out, and maybe in the meantime, I can answer any questions if there are any. Are there any questions?
We have one question here. Is the white rot found in the same fields year over year?
Yeah, it often is. I mean, yeah, every other year or whenever onions are come back in.
All right, we'll leave the poll up for a few more seconds here. Let a chance for everyone to answer who wants to answer.
Oh, I'll ask a question. I was just typing it up, but I just asked. Low carrot insect damage the last couple of years. Any idea why? Or lower?
Well, in terms of, I would say, I guess, weevil for sure. My guess is, I mean, we were catching them, but I'm guessing that it was maybe greater uptake of the use of Rymon and Exirel. Those are two really good insecticides that we've seen. So maybe those timely applications are controlling the damage quite well.
Thanks.
No problem. Yeah, the insects could be social distancing as well during these times.
Okay, I'm going to end the poll. Thank you, everyone, for participating.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Tyler, for that presentation. Right now, we're going to move on to Chantal Veilleux from Corteva, and she's going to give an industry update. So welcome, Chantal.
Thank you. I cannot share my screen yet. There we go. Thank you. Okay, do you see my presentation?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, good. There we go. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Chantal Veilleux. I'm the horticulture specialist for Corteva AgriScience. Today, I'll take 5 minutes to introduce you to our new nematicide, Reclamel. So Reclamel is the brand name for this coming active. We'll know soon how it will be named in Canada because we are not registered yet. So we should get the approval by PMRA June or July of this year. But the active Reclamel will always be associated with the name. So you'll be able to track it. So what is Reclamel? Reclamel is a true nematicide. So it will kill the plant parasitic nematodes. So we know that we are super strong on root knots. So that is excellent news for carrot growers. So we had some trials last year. We have seen really good results on carrots. We know that Reclamel acts by contact and is not systemic in the plants. It will have, and it has, a unique mode of action because it's something new. There's nothing comparable to that. It's not an insecticide, not a fungicide. It's a true nematicide, so it will have its own class of product that we don't know yet which one it would be. It has an excellent toxicological profile by only killing the parasitic nematodes. It leaves all the other organisms on the side and healthy. So that's very good for the environment. Very good IPM tool. There's a wide range of application method. We'll see it in the coming slide. And we'll be part of an entire nematicide management program. Next slide. So what about application method? It can vary, so you just need to think about bringing the product as close as possible to your root zone. So for carrot growers, for you today, guys, I think the best will be to think about either incorporate it into the hill. If you can still do that, you know, when you used to do the talon application, you were able to inject it into the hills. If that is not possible, you can broadcast apply with your sprayer and then making the beds, and then you will find the product through the hills. And there's different application also can be done by drips. Just need to think about putting as much water as possible to bring it to the root zone. Here's a couple pictures of how it can be applied. So introduction plan, like I mentioned last year, it was a research authorization trial. So we had small plots, a couple locations on carrots and potatoes. Last fall, we did some soil initiatives. We wanted to make sure to identify fields where we were going to find nematodes. For this year in 2021, be able to apply the product in fields where we have nematodes, and we want to see the efficacy on nematodes control. So 2021, we have pre-commercial trials on potatoes, carrots, tomatoes, and cucumbers. So by the end of the year, we'll be able to have more information, feel more confident with it, and then be ready for the 2022 seasons for the commercial launch. So that's all the time I have for you today. So have a good afternoon and a great season to all.
Thank you, Chantal.
You're welcome.
All right, moving on to our, sorry, we had a question from Katie. What other nematodes is it active on? Is it active on lesion nematode?
Ooh. That's a good question. So for root lesion, we know we have efficacy, but not as high as control level. So that's where we need to find. Do we have 60, 85? So it will depend on the field, on the pressure of nematodes, and on the crop as well. So from my past experience of last year, I can say that on potatoes, we have some controls. No, not controls, I would say. Suppression will be better, but we are comparable to other products on the market. That's what we can say for now. But for sure, we know that we are super strong on roots nuts.
Okay. And someone also asked, what about stem and bulb nematode?
No, unfortunately not.
Yeah, we haven't, I don't think we've looked at this product on stem and bulb nematodes. So,
well, from theory, from information that I've seen, it looks like we don't have any efficacy. However, I haven't dig more into that. But the first answer is probably nuts, but never know.
right. Okay. Thank you, Chantal. Moving on now to Dennis Van Dyke again. Dennis is going to give an update on some cover crop work that we've been doing on muck soils. Take it away, Dennis.
Thanks, Kevin. Me again. So I'm going to cover a little bit of the work that was done last year. Last year was sort of an initial, more demonstration, I guess, research. Basically, we took the Jane Street site and tried a couple different trials just to sort of make some initial, I guess, establish some plots for some longer term rotations and just to kind of look at some different options. So I'll get into that. The three main ranges that we had, basically our three main trials, were looking at options after onions. So earlier seeded, August, September options after carrots. So later seeded stuff, right? October, November, what can we establish? What'll be good to winter kill for onions next year? And then also looked at full season cover crops. So mostly a biofumigation trial, but also sort of, warm season, what could we grow? What would it look like? How do we need the management in muck? And also a little bit of what's actually going on in the soil in terms of pathogens. Are we doing anything to affect the disease at all? So I'll start first with the biofumigation trial. About an acre plot that we had. We looked at the first little bit was two different mustard varieties that are good for biofumigation. So Caliente 199, which is a high glucosinolate variety that's been used for a long time. And then also a newer variety that's supposed to also have high glucosinolates, Caliente Rojo. So we seeded May 1st, 3 different reps. And then I'll show you sort of what it looked like throughout the season. So sort of 2 months later, right, June 29th, sort of almost full flower, just sort of the time where you want to be thinking about mowing and incorporating it, where the glucosinolate levels are the highest, and you're going to get the best effect. So 2 months, we flail mowed it down first into the smallest amount of pieces as possible. You want the most amount of surface area of all the different pieces to get the best results. And then we also incorporate it with a multivator that we got from R&W. So basically 1 pass with the flail mower, and then right behind it, you're multivating to get it into the soil. Just 8 minutes. If it's not incorporating the soil, you're already losing and off gassing a lot of your benefits. So you want to make sure that if you are going to do the biofumigation portion of it, you get it as small as possible and get it into the ground as fast as possible. So just a couple of pictures of the multivator working it in. Does a pretty good job of incorporating it. And then I'll show you a bit of a pass here. That's loud. So incorporation probably to around, let's say just over and around a foot into the ground, and then falling right behind that flail mower so that we're incorporating it as soon as possible. This is what it looks like after incorporation. So right end of June looks pretty good for seeding into any sort of warm season grass that we're going to look at, which I'll get into in a little bit. So we also took DNA multiscans, which basically looks at what sort of pathogens and diseases are in the soil, and gives you sort of a relative abundance amount. So we sort of plotted that. If for any day traders out there, this is a little different than your typical stock graph. Green means good because it's going down. Red means it's going up, and red is bad in this case. So opposite of what you'd initially be looking at. These little lines across are sort of our initial counts. So before biofumigation, beginning of the year, what are soil levels at? So a couple, let me put this on. So some ones that we, as a carrot grower, you might be worried about, right, are your fusarium species in general, some of those fusarium solani problems, and then also definitely all your pythiums. So your pythium species all over here, and your ultimum. So involved with sort of damping off your stunting, your cavity spot, all in here. So you can see some pretty high numbers here, right? Your fusarium species are pretty high initially. Pythium species definitely off the chart, which is pretty typical for muck soils. But we did see some good results. So overall, pythium species are going down, right? Your Pythium aphanidermatum is going down as well, pretty significantly. But we're also seeing sort of an increase with that mustard biofumigation with some other pathogens. So some of the species of Pythium are going up a little bit. Some of them that might be involved in cavity spot, Phytophthora up a little bit, and then of course Opidium brassicae. So we're growing a brassica crop, and one of the brassica pathogens increases, which is kind of what we'd expect to see. Not really a problem unless you're growing, brassicas in your rotation. But for carrot onion growers, it's not really a concern. But overall, this is for Caliente 199. Overall, some pretty good reductions, I guess, in an initial test just to see what's going on. Going to the next one, this is Caliente Rojo, very similar, basically. Reduction in a lot of pathogens, reduction in Pythium species, increase in some other ones. So between the 199 and Rojo, we didn't really see a whole lot of a difference. Not much of a difference in establishment, not much of a difference in top biomass, and not much of a difference in what's going on in the soil in sort of a first year initial look. So after we were done with that biofumigation trial, right, end of June, we planted some warm season grasses. So sorghum Sudan grass we planted. This is what it looks like in August 17th. We waited 2 weeks in July so that all that basically fumigation from the biofumigation would off gas. We weren't going to stunt our plants at all. So getting pretty good biomass. If at some point, if you'd stand in there, your head would be up here, basically shoulder height, which is good biomass for a couple months of growing. We also looked at a couple different millets. One millet. So we wanted to look at pearl millet, didn't have seed available, so we had a Japanese millet compared to the sorghum a little earlier. Japanese millet did not seem to establish very well. Stand was pretty bad, and the growth was not near as good as sorghum Sudan grass. These crops were incorporated beginning of September. So we mowed them all down, incorporated them, and then we seeded sort of a winter cover of, this was daikon radish. So basically an oilseed radish that we drilled in afterwards. This is pictures on November 11th. You can see this little spot here, a little slow growth. That's from, it was pretty typical across the sorghum plots. So the sorghum Sudan grass, high biomass. When we incorporate in, that biomass is starting to break down. It's got all the nitrogen in there that it's eating up. So there's really definitely a little bit of a stunting effect there as that biomass starts to break down. So that's sort of our full season look. I'm going to get into what we looked at for onions. Same 1 acre plot. These are transplant onions, so they were off pretty early, sort of middle of August, and we sort of planted it August 20th, all the different cover crops. So this was more of a species look. We looked at different species that we would grow and you'd put in when you had some time and think of going into a carrot crop. So we try to get it sort of worst case scenario, the most time to grow as possible. So we looked at barley at 80 pounds an acre, Nitro Plus, which is a mix down here, oats with radish, crimson clover, forage pea, faba bean, and Australian pea. So a good mix of different cover crops that can do different things for you. Fixed nitrogen here with the peas, crimson clover as well, and then some oats for kind of establishment. Looked at just straight daikon radish, and then we also looked at those mustard biofumigations, the Caliente 199 and Caliente Rojo, to see sort of what they would look like planted later on in the season. Could we get enough top growth that we could biofumigate after onions, before carrots, or whatnot? Just sort of what it looked like at the end of the season. So we also, with all of these plots, used an app called Canopio, which sort of takes a picture and estimates the amount of soil you can see. So it's a good estimate of ground cover, which is really what you want, you know, after onions, to crowd out any weeds and just to make sure you have a good cover for the winter as well. So gives a picture and then estimates the soil. So with barley here at 80 pounds an acre, you know, we had 96% ground cover. It's pretty thick in here. There's not too much ground, and the weed competition is pretty good. Moving to the Nitro Plus, also pretty good establishment and ground cover. You know, you see a mix of oats in there and the Phyllodratus. You can see here, right, all the peas and the, I'm not sure which of the peas that is, but, you know, a good establishment of different kind of crops. The daikon radish, you know, pretty good as well, 90% coverage, some misses here and there, but in general, also pretty good establishment. We move into the mustard biofumigations. They were pretty good, a little bit less coverage that you'd see than the other crops, you know, around 80% at a little less seeding rate as well at 10 pounds an acre, but they did a pretty good job. There wasn't too many weeds coming up in here. The Caliente Rojo, I would say it's fairly similar as the Caliente 199. The Canopio app had a little trouble with Rojo because it's a deep purple. Rojo, my Spanish isn't very good, but I'm pretty sure it's red or something like that. So it kind of picks it up as muck soil because it blends in. So a little underestimation here at 64%. It was probably up around 80% coverage. One thing to note that we saw, some of the species that are in those mixes are not very frost tolerant. So the first time you get sort of cold weather, you see some burning back. In some areas, we didn't have great establishment of some of the species as well. So you can see here, you know, you got the chickweed coming in where it's sort of sparse and there's ability for the weeds to come in. So I would say the focus should be more on making sure you have good establishment over sort of the number of species you have. Make sure that the species are going to establish and crowd out weeds. We also, Tyler was brave enough to walk out there in the muck yesterday. So these are pictures from yesterday. So we did not incorporate anything after onions. We just let it winter kill. And so this is what it looks like this year. So barley, pretty good mat of straw here. We are going to plant carrots on this strip. So we wanted to sort of leave it. We're going to disc it early and then see how much trouble it gives us later on to plant carrots sort of end of May, early June. We wanted to sort of have worst case scenario. If it gets away from you, can you still plant the carrot crop afterwards? This is what the Nitro Plus looks like. Winter killed really nicely. You know, the oats winter killed. They're not too much thatch in there. You could rip that pretty easily and plant carrots. Same thing with the daikon radish, right? This disintegrates space against the foam. No problem planting carrots into that. Caliente 199, pretty good top left. Not sure how this is going to work up, but yeah, good establishment. It'll definitely keep your soil in place over the winter and in the spring, that's for sure. Whether or not it gives you trouble going into carrots, we'll see yet. Same with the Rojo, very similar establishment. Not too much differences between the two that we found. How am I for time? Okay, cover crops after carrots, same 1 acre plot. We had planted carrots on that range, and then this one was more of I guess planting establishment trial. So we applied the cover crops in 3 different ways. So we applied a mix of Nitro Plus in August, or basically broadcasted over top of an established crop. You can sort of see, I'll get into the next slide, but you can see how that looks there. So it broadcasted over the crop, see if it would establish in between the rows and if it would cause a problem at harvest. And then in theory, you know, you harvested the crop and then you already have a cover crop there. Just wanted to see how that worked out. Then we broadcast it, same thing, broadcast over the crop right before harvest and then just harvested it like normal. And then we also worked and drilled it after and barley. So the later season seeded stuff was just barley. This is what the seeds look like in between the row, right? So we just broadcast in there. We could if we're going to do it again, we'd probably scuffle. We'll just run a scuffler through there so it would get established because we didn't have great establishment. But you can see sort of the oilseed radish, some of the pea coming up in between the rows. Didn't seem to be too much of a problem in between the carrots and harvesting, but we also didn't really scuffle, so the stand probably wasn't as thick as it could be. This is what it looked like at the end. You know, after you're running over the rows a couple times with the harvester and with the trailer, There wasn't a whole lot of cover crop left. It looked like somebody was, using a lawnmower for the first time. There's a bunch of mohawks all over the place, maybe where something wasn't run over too much, but other than that, probably not a good idea. This was what it looked like broadcast inside over top of the crop and then just harvested. Some got worked in. We saw a little bit of barley coming up. Okay establishment. This is what it looked like over here. Is your drilled crop. Looks pretty good. This is broadcast over and just left after harvest. Tops are there and everything. This is what the broadcast over the crop and just left looks like in the winter. No problem going into onions, but it probably didn't give you a whole lot of benefit over the winter with moving your soil around and any soil health benefits. Another shot of the drilled crop. This is what it looks like in the spring. Same thing. You might have got a little bit of help here, keeping the soil in place, but you'd have no problem going into onions early with this ground. So some early conclusions after 1 year. Good seeding depth is important. Take the time to do it right, otherwise weeds can get away from you. Really need something good with competition, is what we found, because there's not a lot of weed control products available. Something we're also looking at for next year. Biofumigation, some initial positive results. I think it might reduce some soil pathogens, something we'll look at further. The barley, daikon radish, nitro all provide a good ground cover after onions, and winter killed nicely, so it didn't seem to be a problem. Still looking for something after carrots, something that's going to establish in cold weather, that's going to winter kill. It's the elusive unicorn, but we're going to look at different ways to apply it in different species next year. Marieke just got funded a 3-year project through the Alliance partnership to look more, so we can actually do some further longer term studies on this plot. So we're also looking at soil health, comparing the different soil health tests. A lot of the soil health tests have been developed for mineral soil. Does it matter for muck soils? A lot of them are based on organic matter, which is, off the charts with muck soils. So do they apply to muck soils? Can we use those soil health tests do they mean anything for muck soil? Do some herbicide screening, as I mentioned, and then still looking at stuff after carrots. With that, any questions on that?
Thank you, Dennis. We had one question. Did you look at nematode counts before and after mustards or the millet and sorghum? I guess I can probably answer that. No, we didn't look at nematodes, and I don't think the site had too many problems with nematodes. I don't think any of the samples we've taken had any nematode counts in the past. So not currently at the site that we're out at. Okay, if there's no other questions, then we're going to we'll turn into about a 5-minute break. Just quickly before we do that, Bridget Visser had from Stokes has a cooler draw for our marsh growers. So she asked that if anyone's interested to participate in the draw, if you would text Bridget your favorite variety of either carrot, onion, it should be carrot, beets, or parsnips for today. So if you want to text her, if most of you, I think, have her number, then you'll be entered into a draw, and she'll be in touch if you're the successful person. And then we'll just show a quick video, and then we'll see you in about 5 minutes.
Humanity could grow everything else, but our population is increasing. Our natural resources are declining, and our planet's climate is changing. So farming needs to change too. And it has.
Other screen cap.
Tools, sustainable
Oh, sorry. How do I switch that?
higher yields.
Just stop the share for a second.
Can you see that?
Just got to relaunch it.
Can you see that? No?
No, you're not sharing yet.
Oh.
Who was the first
There we go.
farmer
All right.
who planted a seed and grew our world? It was the birth of progress. Because someone could grow a little corn, some wheat, rice, humanity could grow everything else. But our population is increasing. Our natural resources are declining. And our planet's climate is changing. So farming needs to change too. And it has, with smarter tools, sustainable practices, and ever higher yields. Farming gives progress to the world, and the world is giving it back to farming. We're Corteva AgriScience, and we're here to support the people who support us all. With stronger seeds, precise crop protection, and data you can count on, we're bringing the next generation of farming to the next generation of farmers.
All right, we'll see you in a couple minutes. Okay, I think we'll get started maybe in a minute or so. If everyone had a chance to grab something to drink or something to eat. All right, so we're back and we're going to get Tyler back in here today, and Tyler is going to talk about stunted carrots, maybe or maybe not. He'll give a carrot cyst nematode update in the Holland Marsh. Tyler.
Thanks, Kevin. Let me just get this up here. All right, so hi again. Thanks for joining for this second session. So yeah, I would like to give a carrot cyst nematode update for the Holland Marsh. So the carrot cyst nematode, it is this roundworm that lives in the soil and feeds on carrots. Carrots are its only host, carrots and wild carrots. And it can start infecting and feeding when temperatures reach just above zero, around 5 degrees Celsius, till about 30 degrees Celsius. So it's got quite a wide temperature range. So we're thinking that there are at least two of these nematode generations throughout the growing season. The life cycle of this nematode, they start off as an egg, as you can see here, and hatch into these juveniles, which start feeding on carrot roots. And the females turn into these large oval kind of shaped cysts. And these females produce eggs both outside and also inside of themselves. And then that female dies and her shell kind of hardens and protects all of the eggs that are inside. So the eggs can survive inside of the female here for many years. So next time there is a carrot crop, those eggs can hatch and start feeding on those carrots. When the nematode does feed on the carrots, we've seen a variety of symptoms. We've seen this stunting, this hairy root, and also potentially some forking. And when you pull the carrot from the ground, if you look at the fine roots, you can sometimes see these small white or brown cysts on the fine root hairs. And when the nematode is present in a field, it's often found in varying populations. There are usually higher concentrations in hotspot areas. The nematode has been found in a number of countries throughout the world, as well as the state of Michigan. And in Ontario, the nematode was first reported in 2017. So around that time, we started conducting surveys to determine where else this nematode may be in carrot growing regions of Ontario. So we soil sampled a number of fields. And what we found were that the carrot cyst nematode is quite prevalent in the muck soils of the Holland Marsh, and also some of the muck soils that are near the Holland Marsh. There are some fields that are free of the nematode still, and we also haven't found the nematode in any mineral soil fields to date. So since we know that the nematode is present throughout the Holland Marsh, we wanted to check how its population may be changing from year to year, especially during the carrot onion rotation. So what we did is sample a field 1 year, a carrot field specifically in 1 year, and then the next year go back to that same field if it was an onion field and sample it again to see how the nematode populations have changed. So for example, if we look here in 2016-17 and 2018-19, the year where we sampled while it was a carrot crop, and then we sampled again when it was an onion crop, we saw an increase in the number of cysts that were present in that soil. And you can see that again here from 2018 to 2019, that increase. In 2019 and 2020, we saw a bit of a decrease in the number of cysts, which we thought was quite odd, and we're not exactly sure why that is. But generally, we have been seeing this increase from year to year. And when we look between 2016 to 2020, there were two fields where we consistently soil sampled them year after year, and they were on a carrot and onion rotation. And if we just kind of highlight the cysts on their own, what we can see is that general increase in the number of cysts that we're finding in the field from year to year, except for this kind of this oddball here for 2020. What we would expect is the number of cysts to be increasing in the field for many years to come. And the main issue with this is that the more cysts there are, I kind of talked about the eggs can survive in the cysts, so that just means that there are more juveniles, more nematodes available to start feeding on the carrots in sequential years. So because this nematode is present throughout the marsh, we did want to conduct a number of nematicide and fumigant trials to see if any products are able to control the nematode at all. And in 2019, we conducted a nematicide and fumigant trial. The fumigants that we looked at were Bufsan and Pick Plus, and the nematicides were Celebro, Vidate, and Movento, a biocontrol experimental, and Magistine, which is also a biocontrol nematicide. The fumigants were applied as the standard shank application, but the nematicides were applied by spraying on the soil surface using nozzles that were attached ahead of the carrot bedder. So during seeding, the products would be incorporated into the carrot hill. And then we also had 2 drench applications at 2 weeks and 4 weeks after seeding. And what we found were that numerically, the Movento and Celebro treatments had numerically lower nematode damage and a little bit higher yield, but these results were not statistically significant from the untreated check. And in 2019, we also conducted a seed treatment trial. So we treated seeds with Ilevo, which is fluopyram, Movento, and gibberellic acid. And unfortunately, again, we did not find any statistically significant differences in terms of nematode damage or marketability. And there was also quite low nematode damage that year as well. So last year in 2020, we had 3 trials lined up. 2 of the trials fell through because we had quite a bit of heat canker, and a good portion of the carrots were also drowned out due to all that rain we received in August. But we did have a root lesion nematode trial in muck soil that was in good condition. So for this trial, we looked at different rates of Celebro, Vidate, combinations of the 2, and Nimitz. Similar to the 2019 trial, these products were applied at the soil surface and then immediately incorporated into the carrot hill at seeding. And what we found, the results were quite interesting, actually. So some of the rates of Celebro and the high rate of Vidate, as well as the low rate combination of Celebro and Vidate, had a significantly lower percent nematode damage compared to the untreated check. And again, when we look down at marketability, those same Celebro concentrations, actually, no, sorry, some of those Celebro concentrations and that high rate of Vidate had a significantly higher percent marketable yield than the untreated check. So it looks like we may have a couple products that may have some control, in this case for lesion nematode. So since we are seeing that maybe there are products that are able to control, we did want to test out a couple nematicides to see how effective they were at killing the eggs that are inside the cysts. So we did this lab trial. We looked at Vellum Prime, a few rates of Nimitz, and what we found were that the nematicide treatments significantly increased percent of egg mortality compared to the water control. However, after treatment, there were still approximately 30% of viable eggs inside of the cysts. So what have we learned so far? The carrot cyst nematode is present in the Holland Marsh, and populations seem to be increasing. Nematicides, from what we've seen in those lab experiments, can have some effect. However, there are still a portion of nematodes and eggs that can survive. We're thinking that the most effective products may be ones that have a longer period of activity, and also that these products may be more effective when they are worked into the carrot hills. And in 2021, we will be continuing these Celebro and Vidate trials. So just to finish up my talk here, I just wanted to go over a couple other nematodes that we do find in the marsh, the root knot, root lesion, and pin nematodes, and kind of show some of their symptoms because they're just a little bit different sometimes. So for root knot nematode, the threshold is very low. It's 0 nematodes per kilogram of soil. So if you have one, you are over threshold. And that is because the nematode can cause serious damage at low numbers to your carrots. And the symptoms, you typically see these gulls on the fine roots, and you see the stunting and forking and hairy roots here. Lesion nematode. So this is the nematode that was in that 2020 trial I just went over. Its threshold is 1,000 nematodes per kilogram of soil for carrots. At high concentrations, the nematode can cause this hairy root again, stunting and forking. And this is similar for all nematodes at high concentrations. You will often also see stunting of the carrot tops and also some yellowing. And lastly, pin nematode. So this nematode is often found kind of in conjunction with the other nematodes, carrot cyst nematode, root knot, and root lesion nematode. Its threshold is quite a bit higher. It's 5,000 nematodes per kilogram of soil. And we're kind of thinking that their symptoms may just kind of contribute to the symptoms that are seen in some of the other nematodes. And with that, all of our research and this research is available in our 2020 Green Book. If you haven't had a chance yet, Dennis wrote a good article on vegetable nematodes in the grower back in October. So take a look at that if you haven't already. And with that, I'd like to thank Laura and the summer students for all their help with these trials, the participating growers, and all of the funding partners. So thanks for listening, and if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
All right, thank you, Tyler. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. It's Katie here. Sorry, I raised my hand.
Yes, I see that. I was just going to get to you, but
no, it's all good. Sorry, I might have missed it, but for the cyst nematode counts, were you taking just from one field or from multiple fields year to year?
Multiple fields year to year. It wasn't the same number of fields year to year. So those numbers varied a little bit. But for the kind of the long-term one that I was showing there from 2016 to 2020, that was consistently 2 fields that we were looking at.
Okay, and any thoughts on why there was a decrease after 2019?
I'm not too sure. Maybe there could have been some kind of issue in the processing. I'm not sure, but I would expect it to continually increase, or if not, be at least fairly close.
Thanks.
No problem.
We had a question from Dennis. How did we apply the Celebro and Vidate?
So those were applied with the hand boom sprayers. So we applied those basically right over the carrot bed for that treatment. And then right after that, those were worked in with the carrot seeder. Yeah, we used the T-Jet 803 nozzles, and we applied it at a rate of 200 liters of water per hectare.
Okay. Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you.
Moving on, we have Dennis Van Dyke again, and Dennis is going to tell us what's wrong with these beets. Beets Me.
Thanks, Kevin. It's the presentation you've all been waiting for. One on beets. I'm going to talk a little bit about a problem we saw popping up a couple years ago in the marsh, and seems to also have popped up around the same time in Michigan. So seems to be something going on that's relevant to table beet growers. Around 2018, growers are having issues with red beets, sort of yellow tops, sort of stunting. When they harvest them, there's a bunch of dirt stuck on them. They couldn't get the dirt off the roots. The crop just didn't look good. Assumed it was some sort of nutrient deficiency or water or something like that. So it took a little bit of digging, but eventually we found the cause is actually rhizomania. So not much better names for a disease than that. It literally means root madness. So basically it's a virus that gets into the beets. I'm sure you're all sick of hearing about viruses, but the virus that gets into the beets and makes the roots basically go crazy. So it's called the beet necrotic yellow vein virus. Most of the literature and research is on sugar beets because it's a huge problem worldwide on sugar beets, less so on table beets until recently. So, but basically it's a virus, and the unique thing about this one is that it's spread by sort of a soil fungus-like organism. So it's a protist, sort of like clubroot, if you're familiar with clubroot and brassicas. This one's called Polymyxabete. Loves water, has zoospores that literally swim around in the soil. So if you get a little bit of water, they will literally swim around. And it's these little zoospores that have the virus in them and then get into the beets and then cause the disease. So the virus in and of itself can't do anything unless it has these zoospores to transport it around. This organism doesn't do anything to the beets unless it has the virus. It has no real negative effects. It just sort of transports the virus around. So if you have this but no virus, you're okay. If you have the virus in this, then it just spread it around to the crop. These resting spores are supposed to last in the soil for over 10 years. So once you have it, it's kind of a pain. What can it infect? Is basically Chenopodium species. So table beets, sugar beets are the main ones. Spinach is in there. Swiss chard, we've seen it on Swiss chard. We have a problem, but then also tobacco, and maybe a good thing also on lamb's quarter and the pigweed. So it also affect weeds. What are you looking for in the crop? First thing you're probably going to notice is pale yellow tops when you first see it. You know, it's going to look deficient, like you need more nitrogen, like it's short on water. The crops kind of look stressed. Sometimes you'll see crinkling on the leaves, but not always. Sort of typical virus symptoms, but that's sort of the first thing you might see. You might think that it's short on water, so you'll irrigate more, and unfortunately for this one, that actually makes the problem worse because those zoospores will start swimming around if you had too much water. Excessive root growth is the next thing when you harvest. Right, it's going to look weird. There's going to be a excessive growth, not normal amount of root growth. Sort of looks like this. A lot of times, if it's a little wet, there'll be a lot of soil coming up with it as well. Like I mentioned, huge clumps of soil, so you pull them up and a bunch of soil come with it. Hard to do when you're harvesting. A lot of times you can't just knock it off. One interesting thing is that all the vascular tissue will turn white. So if you cut open a red beet, you'll see sort of the white rings of a candy cane beet on a red beet. And so this is not a candy cane beet. This is a red beet that's started to turn white. So, and when it dries up, you see this white, sort of pithy. It's harder. It's bitter. It just doesn't taste very good. So that's sort of the other signs that you can see here. Another thing on the foliage is white stripes. So that vascular tissue turns white, right? So that also goes up the stems. So that's going to turn white as well. It's going to look like a candy cane beet, but it's not. Another symptom, ugly looking alligator skin. Rough outside, especially around the shoulder area. It'll look very rough and ugly. Similar to here, you know, start seeing cracks and buildup. And then finally, last thing, a lot of shoulder cracks, excessive PDO growth that are start moving down the beet. and it'll start to crack and just basically look ugly along with a bunch of roots and dirt on them. So that's sort of what you're looking for. What can you do about it? In sugar beets, a lot of what we know about this problem comes from sugar beets. So what they've done is gone to resistant varieties. It's basically the main way that you can prevent against it. They've started to introduce some table beets that are resistant to, that have some of those resistance genes to Rhizomania, which is good. I'll get to it in a little bit. It loves warm weather. So a lot of times you can kind of, if you can, plan around that. The earlier that it gets infected, the worse it is for the crop. And it's really soil temperatures above 15 Celsius, what's that, like 59 Fahrenheit-ish. When it's above that, it really thrives. So if you can get even an early crop in before the soil warms up and get the crop established before the soil temperature warms up, the better chance you are from preventing early infection. Don't irrigate if you have it in the field, or if you see symptoms, confirm first to making sure it's not a deficiency or water stress, because irrigation is just going to make those zoospores spread around and it'll make the problem worse. Fumigation, maybe. There's a little bit of research that says it might knock it back a little bit, but it's really not overly effective. So maybe might knock it back a little bit, but not a total solution. Rotation in sugar beets, they look around 4 years. 4 years, sort of, the levels start to decline, and if you incorporate resistant varieties into that rotation, it seems to sort of help. Those resting spores will be there for around 10 years, so it's not going to totally fix the problem, but if you can stretch it to 4 years, that'll help. So we ran a variety trial in 2019, University of Guelph, along with Stoke Seeds and Bridget Visser. Looked at 6 varieties. Solo was sort of our susceptible check, sort of a standard in a spot that we knew that had some Rhizomania. We also looked at Red Veil with Veilleux, Grenade, Veilleux, Foxy with Rick Swan, and 2 number varieties from Cicada, AY 17113 and XBE 7110. Some of the results from that trial. So this is disease incidence and severity. So it's basically a rating scale of, did the roots show any damage? How much damage did they show? And how bad was it? Was it still marketable, just a little bit of damage, or is it totally unmarketable? So you can see here, I'll pull this up. The darker bars is disease severity index, so how bad the infection is. And these lighter bars are what percentage of them had Rhizomania symptoms. So our susceptible check here, right, our solo, 100% of them had some sort of symptoms, and most of them are just completely unmarketable. Whereas you sort of had a middle tier here, you know, Grenade and the AY numbered variety showed some decent tolerance, and then the XBE and the Red Veil also reduced from the susceptible. The Foxy looked very good, very low infected, and a relatively low severity. So looked pretty good in terms of the resistance from the disease, with some sort of moderate tolerance resistance in the other varieties. When we look at yield, so this is yield on top of that incidence, right? Inverse relationship. So lots of yield on the Foxy, decent amount on the AY numbered variety, and then sort of Grenade and XBE, the other numbered variety in this middle tier, and then Red Val looks a little better than the Solo, but technically no different according to stats. Just to give you an idea of what you're looking at with Foxy, this is the best one in our trial. A little bit of darker beet, kind of purple. This is what it grades out as, a lot of marketable, just a couple that are sort of infected. Numbered variety AY, this one has more of a cylindrical shape, might not be for you and your growers, but sort of your customers, a little bit of cylindrical long shape. This is XBE variety, looks pretty good, decent mark up. Grenade, Veilleux, also decent looking and pretty good grade out. And then Red Veil, I don't know how to pronounce that. A little better than our Solo, but not as good as the Foxy or the better. And then of course your typical symptoms and a whole bunch of junk in the Solo. So that's sort of where we're at. There are some new varieties that have some resistance built into them. Talk to your seed rep if you think that you might have this problem, or you know that you have the problem, so you can kind of manage around it. Any questions?
Okay, thank you, Dennis. If there's no questions, we have a question. Can you test the soil for the vector?
You can. I don't know if it shows up in a standard test, but we have sent samples in and they have tested for it. So yes, it is possible to test for it. I'm just not sure if it's you can ask for it basically.
Okay. All right, thank you, Dennis. Next, we have Mike Meinhardt from Provision, and Mike is going to share with us their food safety software. So we'll have Mike start sharing his screen.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
And is my screen shared? Do you see a shared screen yet or no?
Not yet.
Start my video. How about now? Nothing yet?
No. So maybe
Okay.
now. See now if you can share your screen.
Share screen. There we go. Got it.
Okay. All right, Mike.
And I will go to here. View full screen mode. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate the time. I've got about 15 minutes. I want to tell you a little bit about Provision, who we are, what we do, and how I think it can help many farms, greenhouses, in the agriculture industry sort of across the country. First, let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Mike Meinhardt. I spent the last 10 years working in the greenhouse world for a company called Red Hat Cooperative. And for those of you who haven't heard of Red Hat is kind of the Leamington of the prairies, I would say. We're in southeastern Alberta, around Medicine Hat area with about 180 acres of greenhouses. About 35 growers make up that 180 acres. Grow all the typical greenhouse products for retailers across Western Canada, with a little bit of product into Ontario and a little bit into the US. We had a really strong, I handled sales and marketing. So I wasn't QC, but I was sort of there watching and got dragged in when needed. And my observation at Red Hat was we had a very strong commitment to QC. We had a strong team both at the greenhouse level as well as at the packing facility. But one observation I had was about 2 weeks every year, chaos ensued. And that was the 2 weeks leading up to an audit. And otherwise calm, collected folks would be running around with their hair on fire, prepping for an audit. The stress level was high. The level of distraction from the day job was high. And it kind of took the whole organization kind of spiraling for a few weeks. It got to the point where I would kind of find out when the audits were, and I would head to Ontario to book meetings with Loblaw and Walmart and Sobeys just to get out of Dodge, because it got a little bit crazy. I'll talk a little bit about that, and I'll talk a little bit about scenarios, and I have a feeling some of the farmers sort of in the mix here may have some similarities to what I experienced. But first, let me talk a little bit about the regulatory board. So GFSI, the Global Food Safety Initiative, is often called the Global Food Safety Passport. Essentially, what they're trying to do is ensure that what's done locally is also done nationally and internationally. So if you're doing something in southwestern Ontario, the guys in BC are doing the same, the people in the US are doing the same. The benefit to that is if you're selling onions in southwestern Ontario and you have an opportunity to sell to BC, you should be all doing the same things, and it should reduce roadblocks to doing so. Same thing if you wanted to sell to the US internationally. That's sort of the utopia. Most retailers, if not all of them now, certainly all the major ones, have now said that farmers must comply with Canada GAP or GFSI and have their food safety certification to be able to buy products from those farms. And for Canada Gap, which falls under GFSI, starting next year, you need to have a 100% score on your audit to pass, and that's new. So that puts farmers into a tough situation. You must comply. You've got to take it seriously because you need to do well on your score. But like any smart business owner, you don't want it to cause chaos. You don't want it to distract employees any more than it needs to. Everybody has a day job of growing vegetables for your local market, and you don't want to get sidetracked by too much. So tell me if any of these scenarios sound familiar, or think about if they do. Are you a small family farm that has avoided Canada Gap up until now? Everything's been fine, you do what you need to do, and you know that you're sort of compliant if you were part of Canada Gap, but now you have a buyer who's told you starting next year they can't buy from you anymore unless you're certified. Maybe your scenario is more like what I experienced at Red Hat. Your team spend all year doing what they need to do to be compliant, but in the weeks leading up to an audit, they're digging through binders, they're looking through paperwork, they're trying to find all the information and all the forms that were filled out in the months prior. Once you find the paperwork, you have to go through all of it all to make sure that it's right, because you don't want there to be any errors when you get to your audit process. If you don't find some paperwork, maybe you need to recreate it because it's been lost or somehow misplaced. And the whole process becomes a real distraction and a stressful period of time. Or maybe scenario 3, everything's going kind of well. You're typically getting 90s, 92s, 95s when you get your audits done every year, but you're wondering what 100% looks like, given that's a new standard. And I know at Red Hat, we never got 100 that I remember. We were a good 94, 5, 6 every year, and people would be pretty angry if the number was closer to 90 at our end. But I don't ever remember 100. So what does that look like starting next year, and how do you achieve that? So Provision. Let me tell you a little bit about Provision. So I joined Provision several months back because I believed that there was a better way in the food safety world to manage that part of your business. Simply what Provision does is we digitize food safety compliance, which results in saved time, increased accuracy, higher audit scores, and a simpler process through the whole thing. So how do we do it? There's really 4 things that kind of mess things up around food safety and compliance: missing forms, missing information, mistakes within those forms, and then just from a business standpoint, the time and effort it takes to fill everything out and remain compliant 12 months of the year. So starting with missing forms. You've done the form, or an employee's done the form, but now you're searching, looking for it. And I describe this as my wife's making dinner. She asked me to run to the grocery store because she needs me to pick up some sugar. And I jump in the car, I can't find my keys. So now I go back in the house, I look in the kitchen, I look in the living room, I don't find my keys. Then, okay, what was the last jacket I wore? When did I last drive the car? What pants were I wearing that day? And it takes me 20 minutes to retrack my steps, find the keys, and I could have been to the grocery store and back, and she could have the ingredients she needed for dinner done and ready to go, and I've just found my keys. That happens every day on every farm around the world when you're working in paper. What's our solution to this? You can work online or offline, with or without internet, but once a form is saved, it's never lost. You know exactly where it is, it's in the software. So how do you pull it out of the software? You can search a form any number of ways: by the name of the form, the person who submitted the form, the month or date that the form was submitted, any information that's on the form, any of that information you can pull and just pull the form out. So you know where it is and you know how to find it. What about missing information? Number 2, somebody forgot it was due, somebody didn't know a form needed to be filled out. How do we solve that? Well, our solution here is once you set up forms, you can assign people to complete it and set due dates for it to be done. So if your food safety manager's name's Lisa, Lisa knows that she's getting alerts telling her that she needs certain information. She's getting alerts letting her know that certain information is due at certain times. And if she starts falling behind and didn't get to it, she gets reminders. You can even set, if a month or 2 or 3 weeks pass and the form isn't filled out, you can set escalation where it goes to her manager, to somebody else in the organization, just so that you know that forms are done, they're done on time, and they're ready to go. As a bonus here, you can start putting in pro tips. So for any question on any form at any time, you can have a pro tip button right on the side. So if in this case, Lisa gets to a question and she doesn't know the answer, she can click on the pro tip and it'll tell her exactly how to fill, what that question means and how she should be filling it out. So really what you're now doing is you're training your staff in real time to make sure that they're filling everything out right and correctly from the beginning. Now, what about wrong or missing information? So somebody forgot to fill out the form, or when they, or a piece of the form, or they put something in wrong. And I know at Red Hat, we would spend a lot of time going through every form, making sure that information was correct, double checking things. So what's the solution here? For any line item on any form, you can set criteria. So what is a correct answer? What is an incorrect answer? And if somebody puts in a deviation, then you know that that's going to flag. So this is no different than you're buying something from Amazon. You go to put on your, you go to pay for it and you forget to put your expiry date for your credit card. What happens? You go all the way back to that line item. It's highlighted in red and it says, put in your expiry date, put in your expiry date. Same situation happens here. Don't forget the harvest date. You've harvested too early in this example on the slide, and there needs to be a corrective action or something to be able to put that date in. So now you know that you're getting correct information in real time put into every form. So what can life look like? How does that change things on a day-to-day basis at an individual farm? So imagine a time when all your tasks are complete, all information's accurate, all forms are in one place and easy to find, and any deviations are caught in real time and corrected. Imagine what the 2 or 3 weeks leading up to an audit can now look like. Your team's confident, they're calm, they're collected. They know they've done what they need to do and they know that it's done right. They're not distracted for that week or two. They're doing their daily business because they know that everything's set, ready to go. And imagine the next step of that if the auditor has equal confidence in the forms because they know exactly what you're doing and how you've set it up. And now maybe the auditor down the road says, I'm not needing to come on site to review your forms. Give me a password. Let me do that from my office. I'm only going to show up on site when there's something I need to visually inspect. So that means less time at the farm, less distraction for your employees, and a simpler process. So if this is something that sounds interesting, if this is something you want to find out more about, we believe that we can help farms save time, reduce stress, reduce human error, simplify the audit process, and ensure higher scores. We'd like to talk to you. We'd love to tell you more about it. We have a website landing page set up, provision.io/muck. On that landing page, you can reach out to me directly. You can see this presentation again. You can find our brochure and other information. And then, of course, the $1 million question, pricing. So we spend a lot of time talking to Jody, Holland Marsh Growers Association, the Vegetable Marketing Commission in BC, a number of different organizations, as well as Canada Gap and HACCP. And everybody independently said the same thing. This needs to be affordable for even a family farm where they have one user, 3 or 4 people working the 300 acres. With this can't be cost prohibitive. So what we've done is we've listened to that and we've set pricing at $49 a month for a user. So even the smallest farm for a few $100s a year can be set up to go digital with their food safety. We can scale up. So if you're a larger farm or if you have multiple packing facilities, multiple crops and multiple areas, we can scale up as large as it needs to go. But we wanted to make sure that the family farm can move to a digital world without having to worry about sort of it's ridiculously cost, which is one of the things that hurts this sort of development and or advancement. We also are offering 10% off for anybody from the Holland Marsh Growers Association who comes through the website and the Muck conference. So with that, that's everything I have to tell you guys about ProVision for today. Would love to talk to people more if they have more questions or more details. And if anyone does have questions, we'd be happy to try to answer them.
All right, thank you, Mike. We have one question here. The question is, can growers print out the forms to give to auditors? So can it be done with paper still?
Yeah, so if you put everything online and then you wanted to then print it all off, yes, you could.
Okay. So thank you very much. Any other questions? All right, and Mike will be in the meeting as well, and this is being recorded, so anyone can go back and get the information if they still need it.
Great, thanks very much.
Right now, we're going to have an industry update from Bayer, and they have a video which I'm going to start sharing.
Good afternoon. It's great to be able to join you this way virtually. It'd be a lot nicer
Can
to be
everyone
in that
hear
Bradford
this?
Arena, but hopefully next year we will be back in there and chatting with you that way. My name is Marieke Patton, and I'm the Territory Sales Manager for Bayer. I live in the Alliston area, and I cover Walkerton to Lindsay.
And my name's Laura Aarts, and I work in the horticulture side, giving support to retails and growers in horticulture, and I'm based out of Woodstock.
So today we're going to do a bit of a rapid fire, tell you about some updates on some Old Faithful products, and then also a launch of a new product that we're selling this year. But first update here is on DCIS. We have a simple formulation change. We've doubled the concentration of the formulation. So we're going to be going from a DCIS 5 EC, which is in a 1 liter jug, to a DCIS 100 EC. It'll be a 1.2 liter jug. And the only thing you need to know is whatever rate you're doing today, you just have to cut that rate in half going forward with the new formulation. On Admire, we get a lot of questions about the revised label changes that did go through the PMRA. We have updated the labels on the jugs, but really when Laura and I looked at the crops that you are most interested in, there really is no change. So no change on the root vegetables, leafy greens, leafy vegetables, or the brassica crops. Another update here on Vellum Prime. We launched this product a couple of years ago in potatoes for nematodes and early blight suppression. And we've got a number of crops that have been added to the label. Most important for you would be the brassica leafy vegetables. So you can see those crops listed there for nematodes and powdery mildew suppression. Best practices, the best results is really with micro sprinkler or drip irrigation system. All crops have the same rate, so 200 mils per acre, and you can use it 1 to 2 times per year.
Thanks, Marieke. Now I'm going to start off by introducing a new insecticide we have registered called Veilleux. So this is a group 28 insecticide, so it's a powerful second generation diamide, and it's registered on a number of different vegetable crops. It's low risk to pollinators and other beneficials when it's used according to the label. So I've bolded here the crop groups that we thought you would be most interested in and the pests that it's registered on. So you can see the leafy vegetables as well as the brassica head and stem vegetables. And for the pests that it has activity on, you can see imported cabbage worm, diamondback moth, it's excellent on this pest, cutworm, armyworm, really strong on flea beetles. It's got aphid suppression and activity on cabbage loopers. And you can refer to the label for your specific crop to make sure it's on there, but just to show you, there is lots of different crops that are in that leafy vegetable group that it's registered on, and the brassica head and stem vegetables. So just to show you a quick video of Veilleux in action, you can see on the left here is where the leaf was treated with Veilleux. And this is armyworm actually over a 14-hour period. It's a time-lapse video. And it does work by ingestion, so the insect does need to feed on it, but once they get even a small amount of the product, you can see that there's very little feeding that goes on after that, and it's very fast acting on killing the larva. And just to show you the long-lasting activity, this is again looking at diamondback moth, and you can see the pink bars are Vailleux, and it's compared to XRL and Coragen. And you can see even when the insect came in 12 days after the product was applied, you're still getting excellent activity with Vailleux. And I mentioned it had excellent activity on flea beetles. This is some trial work that was done in Quebec to compare Coragen and XRL, which are two other group 28s on the market. And you can see here with the work that was done, over 90% control on flea beetle. So it's an excellent option for controlling flea beetle. Just a few things, rain fast in 1 hour, works in a wide range of temperatures, and it's got a short re-entry and pre-harvest interval. So hopefully you'll get an opportunity to try it this year, and you'll be happy with it as well. So thanks again, and Marieke and I would like to wish you all the best for a safe and healthy cropping season. Thanks.
All right, I see we had one question, but Laura is in the meeting and she was able to answer that. So thank you, Laura. Any other questions for Laura before we move on? Okay, moving on, we'll have Shawn Janse, and Shawn is going to give a highlight of our carrot variety trials that were done at the Muck Station in 2020. Go ahead, Shawn.
All right, here we go. There we go. Can we see it all?
Yes, you're good.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Kevin. Okay, so my name is Shawn Janse. I'm the research station manager here at the Muck Station, and part of my job, besides looking after the building and other such things, is also looking after the variety trials. So today I'm going to talk about the carrot variety trial from 2020 that was conducted at the Muck Research Station. We seeded it on May 20th and the 21st. We had 25 varieties from 5 companies. We harvested it on the 19th through the 26th of October. The evaluations occurred sort of from the 19th to the 2nd of December. As far as just some trial highlights or things that I noticed through the trial, we applied irrigation to aid in establishment. The carrots came up okay, but it was at a little bit of a more drier period of time, so I put some water on just to make sure we kept everything moving along. As far as the stand and the vigor of the carrots went, they were quite good. I was quite pleased with everything. Through the whole season, we had low weevil damage. Yields were good. We'll have a comment on that when we get into it a little bit. There was moderate incidence of cavity spot found at evaluation. Low levels of blight in the fall when I was doing the assessment. Blight really was not that big of an issue. So that was a really nice thing to see. Average lengths, again, we'll talk a little bit about that when we get into yields. And really actually some nice color in the carrots. They were quite nice to look at. Looking at percent marketable, sort of the carrots are divided into 2 categories, a cello and a jumbo. Jumbos being more of those kind of, I'm going to say more on the processy, chunkier side. Cellos, of course, what we kind of think of as a Bugs Bunny style type carrots in that area. But the trial average for cellos was 75 and for jumbos was about 72. It sort of ranged from 89.5 down to 56.5 for the cellos and 82% to about 40% in the jumbos. So there was a bit of a variation noticed in there. But an interesting thing was in the cellos and in the jumbos, we saw actually a decrease of about 3 and 8% compared to the 2019 variety trial. Those that were the top percent marketable in the cellos, Volcano at about 89.7 and Baldero from Beilleux at about 82%. The next best ones were Orange Blaze and Berlin from the cello and the jumbo at 83 and 81. Followed by Enterprise and Bravia. And Bravia, that was the 2nd year in a row that it was in the top 4 as far as percent marketable goes at 82 and 80% basically percent marketable. And the last couple to show is Naval from in the cello group at 80% and Belgrado at 78.2% marketable. When looking at yield, The trial average this year for the cellos was 1197. It ranged from 824 to 1444. And of course, this has to be used as a comparison with just inside the trial. It's not necessarily what you would see in a grower field. We're dealing with a small area, and one extra carrot pulled out at harvest can make a bit of a evaluation difference compared to what you'd see maybe out in the field. But it was similar to what we saw in 2019. In the jumbos, the trial average was 1274. It ranged from 550 to 1802. And that was sort of a decrease of about 40 bushels per acre. The ones that had the highest yielding out of the trials, in the cellos, Brilliance from Stokes at 1444 bushels per acre. And in the jumbos, not surprisingly, Belgrado, that's the 7th year in a row it's made it into the top 4 at 1802. Nevada from Beilleux was the second best one in the cello types at 1422, and Berlin from Beilleux at 1789 was the second best one in the jumbos type carrots. Volcano from Ville-Morin at 1339 bushels per acre, and Baldido from Beilleux at 1535. And finally, the top of the top 4, Enterprise came in 4th at 1282, and Bastia at 1529. So we didn't see too many repeats in yield compared to from previous trials, except for the Belgrado. Then looking at oversize. So and what we consider oversize is anything that's greater than 1 3/4 inches in diameter up around the crown area. So in the cellos, Naval had about had 38% of the carrots being a little bit on the oversize, or what maybe we classify slipping into a jumbo market. Volcano at 35, Enterprise at 31, and the trial average in the cellos was 26.8. And that was a 4% decrease compared to what we saw in 2019. In the jumbos, Berlin from Beilleux at 73%, Bravia at basically 70%, and Belgrado at 68%. And that trial average was 52.5%. And that actually was a 7% decrease compared to 2019. As a whole, when I did the harvest of the samples in October, I did feel that the carrots seemed to be a tad shorter than what I was expecting or thought I should see. And I also felt that the carrots as a whole, when we're filling up the bag, just were a little lighter on yield overall. Now, some of those numbers were similar to 2019, but there was a slight decrease. And also you can see here too, a little slight decrease in oversize. So we may have had the same amount of carrots, but the sizes might have just been a little more off compared to 2019. Looking at scores, so the quality of the carrots, we're basically looking at uniformity of shape, length and width, appearance, internal and external color, blight, resistance to green. The trial average was 6.67 average, very similar to what we see usually most years. It ranged from, it's kind of below average at 5.48 to something that's quite good at 7.57 overall rating. Quality was slightly better in the jumbos than what we saw in the cellos. And usually year after year, we do see that a little bit. Tendency to have a little more of a smoother carrot, a little more filled out carrot in the jumbos, which usually helps bump up the quality ratings a little bit there. But the top 6 varieties that had the highest score, in the cello type, Narvik from Beilleux at 7.57. In the jumbos, it was Jackson from Beilleux at 7.29. Volcano in the cellos was the second best as far as quality goes. And Extremo from Ville-Morin at 7.24 was the second best in the jumbo type. Brilliance from Stokes at 7.21 and Newhall at 7.14. And also probably just looking through those slides, you're noticing there have a tendency to be a little more of a chunkier carrot in the top scores. Again, probably quality of skin and things like that makes a difference there to help boost those up a bit. Looking at cavity spots, the trial average was about 45% of the carrots having some form of cavity spot found on them, most of it being following into a light to medium-sized lesion on the root. It ranged from one variety only having 22% of the carrots having cavity spot with a light medium-sized lesion. And of course, a light lesion is about a 1 to 2 millimeter. A moderate sized lesion is 2 to 5 millimeters. And then one variety ranging up to 95 of the carrots having cavity spot with a medium sized lesion. It was a 1% increase compared to last year, I thought with some of the dryness that we had in 2020, we maybe see a slight decrease in cavity spot, but it was similar as you can see from 2019. There was actually a slight difference. There actually was a little more of an increase in the number of individual spots on the roots. So when I'm doing the evaluation, I look for the biggest cavity spot, and that's what we're marking down. But I also try to look at see how many spots there are on the root. If there's like 2 to 4, 4 to 6, 1 to 2, whatever the case may be. And all that information is also found in the Green Book. But the varieties that had the lowest amount of cavity spot in the trial, Volcano, which is the second year that it's fallen into that category from being in trials, at the 22%, Brilliance at 35%, Narvik at about 40%, Narval, 6 years in a row that has fallen into the lowest cavity spot from the trial results at 43%, and Enterprise at 47%. And again, the trial average was 45 of a light medium-sized lesion. Looking at weevil and rust fly damage, this year in 2020, we had significantly dropped off on a lot of damage, especially from 2019 as far as rust fly goes. 2019, there was a big rust fly outbreak, I would say, in the fall, and we had a ton of damage in the variety trial. Weevils made a slight comeback this year. Rust fly was pretty much nil in the trial. Very hard to find anything. The trial average for weevils was about 4.8% of the carrots having some type of damage, and for rust fly damage, only 0.5%. The big thing that I want to take out from here, you can kind of see the black lines as the weevils in the previous years, and they were climbing up a bit. The introduction, as Tyler mentioned, of Ramon and XRL and using it in the variety trial has made a big, significant difference in reducing weevil damage. So we're really pleased with that, and it seems to be working well. Looking at adaptation, so in the main trial, we have 3 replicates. They're sort of the commercial varieties that are out there. In the adaptation trial, it's some new products for the seed company, just wants to get it out, see how it performs maybe on our muck soil, and kind of take it from there. So this year we had, I believe it was 6 varieties. So the ones with the best percent markable are those 6 were a numbered variety from Illinois Seed Company, numbered variety from Pure Line Seeds at 87%, Beilleux's numbered variety, 3187, the second year that it's been in the adaptation, and it's also been in the top part of the percent marketable at 83%, and Metro from Pure Line Seeds at 82%. And just to mention quickly while on this page, Illinois and Pure Line Seeds are a couple new companies that have come in this past year, and they are here again for 2021. So it's nice to see we have a couple new companies putting in some new type of carrots also into the trials. So that's promising for the future. As far as yield goes, the numbered variety from Illinois Seeds had the highest at 1437. Kind of see there, it's a bit more of a jumbo type carrot. The Metro from Pure Lines at 1407, a numbered variety, another one from Pure Lines at 1318, and then a numbered variety from Beilleux 3188 at about 1041. Looking at the score, again, quality-wise, the 3187 for Beilleux came out quite at the highest for score of those 6 varieties. The numbered variety 2005 from Illinois Seeds at 7.29, the Metro from Pure Line at 7.1, and the 0.0283 from Pure Line at 6.71. So quality in the adaptation was quite decent. All 6 of them actually were average or slightly above average as far as score goes. Looking at the storage trial, so those are the carrots that we grew in 2019. They were placed in the fall of 2019 into the storage, and we looked at them in around June of 2020. We had 25 varieties from 6 different companies, and the storage term was about 38 weeks, give or take. As far as the storage trial highlights go, the percent markable ranged from 97 to 57. The weight loss ranged from 8.8 to 18.4. The decay ranged from about 2.8 to a high of 42.8, kind of significant there. They did overall store good, and there was a slight increase in weight loss we saw compared to some previous years. Top sprouting also seemed to be a bit more of a concern. Every year when the storage trial is being evaluated, we'll either see top sprouts taking off quite heavily, root sprouts taking off, and the odd time we see both both of them taking off. So last year was more of an issue for top sprouting for some reason. The ones that came out with the highest percent marketable after the storage trial were Speedo from Ville-Moran at 97% of the carrots still good in quality and marketable. Volcano treated with inoculum from Seminova at 96.5% still marketable. Volcano from Ville-Moran at 96.3. New Hall in the grown as a jumbo, and that is actually the 6th year that it's come out of the storage trial as one of the top percent marketables within the top 6. From Veilleux at 96.2. Cello Bunch, 3rd year that it's been in the top 6 coming out of storage. From Stokes at 95.2% still, and then New Hall, but as grown as a cello from Veilleux at about 95%. You can kind of see there also the bin sample that's good. Even if it's got top sprouts or root sprouts, we're looking more at diseases or any type of presence of rot, that type of an idea that would make carrot unmarketable. As far as weight loss, as I sort of mentioned earlier, the percent weight loss this year creeped up a little bit from previous years, but the varieties that had the least amount of weight loss in the trial were Novato from Veilleux, Navo from Veilleux, Interrupt from Seminus, Cello Bunch, and Bastia. And Bastia, again, the 2nd year that it made it into the top 5 as far as that go. And ranging basically from 8.8 to about 9.5%. The trial average was about 11.5% weight loss. Looking at decay, the varieties that had the least amount of decay or held up the best over that period of time was Speedo from Ville-Moran at 2.8, Volcano with inoculum from Seminova at 3.1% decay, just Volcano from Ville-Moran at 3.3, New Hall seeded as a jumbo from Veilleux at about 3.5, and Cello Bunch, 3rd year that it's made it into the lowest amount of decay found in storage from Stokes at about 4.3%. The trial average was 15.1, and that actually was a decrease, an increase of approximately 3% compared to what we saw from the 2018-2019 storage trial results. I very quickly have kind of gone through the variety trial. As it's sort of been mentioned several times already today, we do have all of our information in our 2020 Muck Vegetable Trial and Research Report. Basically, the book is the first 2/3 is all the research trials conducted at the station, and the last third of the book is the variety trials at the station. In there, you'll find a lot more detail about a summary of the growing season for the variety trials, the management practices of what I did to grow the variety trials. I know a lot of growers sometimes are asking me, what did I spray? How often did I spray? How often was I using micronutrients, things like that. That is all listed in there. The results of all the different assessments taken, and also just some evaluation comments are also listed all in there. So it's a really good resource. So if you have some time, please take some time to get a copy or look up the copy online. Speaking of online, the Muck Station website, everyone knows we have this. It went up for some upgrades in the winter here of 2020 into 2021. The university moved forward with some upgrades for our website. So if you're going onto it, you may, and haven't been on for a little bit, you're going to see some changes. All the information is still there that was on previously. You just have to do a little more searching because it's not quite as noticeable as it once was when we were running the website. But it is all there, and that is the new address for the website. And don't forget also that we do Twitter. Tyler quite often is geared a lot for the integrated pest management, but information is sent out on Twitter, so keep that in mind too. And of course, I can't do the variety trials all by myself. I have Mishko, that's my right-hand man here at the station, helping with all the trials. And this year we had a summer student, Noah Vander Kooi, who aided in keeping the trials going, collecting data with me, and he was a very valuable asset, and I appreciated his help very much. And that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Shawn. Are there any questions for Shawn? I see we have one question. Can we get a book sent to us? Possibly, yes.
Yeah, if you go onto the website or phone the station, just let us know and we'll try our best to get something sent out to you if you're from a distance. The key thing too is the green book itself is on the website in a digital PDF form. I did just get a notification yesterday that the person who's loading it onto the website was having some difficulties, but it should be on within the next week or so. So keep that in mind.
Okay, you're in Wisconsin. Yeah, we'll see if we can get one to you, Kaylee. Like Shawn said, it will also be up, and all our previous ones are also on the website to view there. Okay, we'll move on to Marieke McDonald, our last presenter of the day, and Marieke is going to give us a highlight of our carrot research trials. Marieke.
Thanks, Kevin. And just to be sure everyone can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, good. I'd like to start by acknowledging that in addition to Kevin Vander Kooi, there were some other people involved in this work. Grad student Umber Anelius, undergrad student Ashley Ahrens, and Dennis Van Dyke. You've heard a lot from Dennis already today. And in addition to all that work, Dennis finished his master's degree. So he's been very busy the past year. The work I'll be talking about today involves carrot leaf blights. So there's two fungi that cause leaf blights, Cercospora and Alternaria, but we tend to lump them together because management is very similar. And then I'll be talking about cavity spot and other diseases caused by Pythium, especially forking or stunting. And as we've already heard, there's too many things that can cause carrots to be stunted or forked, but Pythium root dieback is one of those. So with carrot leaf blight, I'll talk about our trials from 2019 and 2020. We've been looking at some new products, new materials. 2019, we looked at, ran a trial on muck soil with Enterprise. It was sprayed 5 times during the growing season, and we assessed blight at the end of the season for incidence and severity. And this trial was to assess new material, new product, T77, which is a biological. It contains fungus, Trichoderma atrophidae from Silvar. And we looked at 2 different rates, compared it to a standard fungicide, Quadris top, that I'm sure you're all familiar with, and of course, compared it to an untreated check. In this trial, we had relatively low leaf blight at the end of the season. The yellow bar here is the untreated check, so disease severity was about 20%. The low level of T77 did reduce disease. High rate was very close, but not statistically different from the untreated check. And it wasn't a big surprise that the fungicide Quadris top was very effective in controlling leaf blight. For 2020, we moved our trial to mineral soil near the marsh with Cello-Bunch. This is a site that's had a lot of severe leaf blight over the past years. Was also sprayed 5 times during the growing season, and it was assessed after each spray in addition to assessment at harvest. And this was to evaluate a new fungicide, we're not allowed to disclose the name yet, at 3 different rates. But one of the questions was whether adding a non-ionic surfactant like Agrol 90 would improve the efficacy of the fungicide. We compared it to a standard flint, and of course, again, had an untreated. So we did have a lot more leaf blight in 2020, mostly because of the site, I expect. So over 70% in the untreated check. Here are the rates of the new product, 1 kilogram, 1.5 kilograms, and then 3 kilograms. The first lowest rate, not significantly different from the untreated check. So we get into a higher rate, we're seeing less disease and different from the untreated check. And Flint and the new product at the high rate were very similar. And these brackets here are to help you compare the product and the product plus Agrol 90. And there's little or no difference. We see something that might be a subtle difference, but not significant with the slightly higher rate. And then the highest rate was only applied with Agrol 90, so we didn't have real comparison there. So for the leaf blights, it's always good to see new products, new options for control of any of the diseases on these crops in the marsh. T77 is biological, so it's approved for organic use, and there aren't very many products for organic growers. It wasn't as effective as a conventional fungicide, but we're finding in other situations we can alternate the biological with the conventional fungicide and still get very good control. So that could be an effective approach, reduces the total amount of fungicide applied and helps to reduce the risk of resistance building up in the fungi. So we're really happy to see that there are new products. And with this new fungicide, we weren't able to identify any advantage of adding a surfactant when it was sprayed. So the rest of the presentation is going to focus on diseases caused by Pythium on carrots. Cavity spot and the forking caused by Pythium root dieback. Pythium can also cause damping off of carrots. We did get just recently notified that we have funding for this project for the next 3 years from the Ontario Agri-Food Innovation Alliance. That's really good news. It's going to let us continue some of the work we've already been doing. So we need to look at new materials to control these diseases. We'll continue to screen carrots for resistance. There's some suggestion that Pythium may be resistant to Rhinomil in the marsh, so we're interested in looking at that. And grad student Umbrin is developing molecular methods to identify all these Pythium species. Even for an expert, it's quite difficult and time-consuming to grow them out and identify them. So there's a real value in using molecular methods. Dennis showed you some of the molecular tests when he was looking at the biofumigant crops. The lab in Guelph doesn't have tests for a lot of the Pythium species that we're interested in with cavity spot. So this is going to be a real advantage. And when we get those tests perfected, we want to use them to see if we can take soil samples from fields and determine which field may have the highest risk of cavity spot. There may be some advantages to avoiding those high-risk fields. So in 2020, with the help of Dennis Van Dyke and the undergrad student Ashley, we looked at a new fungicide, picarbutyrazox, as a drench and also as a seed treatment. It's called Viantis as a seed treatment. Compared it to Rhinomil, which we consider our standard, and then also included several other fungicides that have shown some activity against the group of organisms that includes Pythium. And we also looked at this biological Rhizovital. Arondis Gold is a product that works very well for downy mildew organisms, which are fairly closely related to Pythium. We assessed the disease at harvest using our standard methods. We do a separate assessment for forking, and essentially we wash the carrots, look at the percent of carrots with incidence and the severity, very similar to what Shawn was talking about. And when we're looking at breeding, we also assess the carrots for the leaf blights that I just talked about and do an assessment for bolting in the field. So picarbutyrazox, this new product, here we had several rates applied as a drench and several rates applied as a seed treatment compared to our untreated check. There wasn't that much cavity spot in the trial, 15% in the untreated check, and basically there were no differences among any of the treatments. Numerically, the lowest rate looked like it might be a little bit different, but really 4% difference in cavity spot doesn't amount to a whole lot. When we looked at forking in this trial, that's these pale orange bars. It looks like there might be a slight trend as the rate increases, but again, no significant differences in carrot forking either. And then you may have noticed that some of those fungicides I mentioned weren't in the previous graphs. So here we have the check from the previous graphs, the low rate of picarbutyrazox from the previous graph, and then the other fungicides that I mentioned. And again, the take-home message is that there were no differences for cavity spot or for carrot forking with any of these products. So it's kind of back to the drawing board. None of these products reduce cavity spot or forking. There may be resistance to Ridamil. It's still worthwhile investigating that. But none of the other products seem to be effective either. So there's still more work to be done to look at different rates. Maybe we can apply it more effectively. These products do control similar fungi, so we're still puzzling over what can be done to get better control of these diseases. Which brings me to carrot breeding. It's always ideal if we just have resistant varieties and we don't have to apply other fungicides or other products to control disease. So for the past number of years, we've been working with the carrot breeder at the USDA, Phil Simon, and assessing lines in his breeding program to assist him to breed carrots that are resistant to cavity spot. We compare these to a very susceptible line, Atomic Red, that is a red carrot. Purple carrots are almost all, but not totally, resistant to cavity spot, and Purple Haze is our standard. And then we compare them to some carrots you're probably familiar with, Cello Bunch and Envy. And because a lot of this work is funded by the California growers, we include some cut and peel carrots that are widely grown in California. So long term, a lot of the focus is on California because that's where most of the carrots are grown in North America. But the breeding program is in Wisconsin, which is very similar latitude to Ontario. So the breeding should also have a lot of benefits for carrots that are grown in Ontario, Quebec, and other parts of Canada. And the breeding program also wants to incorporate lots of other beneficial qualities. So resistance to leaf blight, of course, the Pythium root dieback, bolting, and Phil's group is looking at other things, including resistance to various nematodes. We've been using standard methods over the years, seeding at the Muck station where cavity spot develops every year. And of course, we don't apply any fungicides or any other products to control cavity spot. Otherwise, everything is grown with standard methods. So 2020 was a pretty good trial for cavity spot. We had good stand in our carrots. You can see that a few lines did bolt. That wasn't a surprise. And highest incidence was 90% and severity was 51%. So a little bit higher in a few of these than in Shawn's trial. We think that part of the reason for the higher cavity spot is that we did get a higher than average rain in August. And that's sort of the time of year where high rain can contribute to more cavity spot development. Leaf blight was moderate and carrot forking was moderate to low. So here's the results from only a selected number of carrots. There were 60 breeding lines in this trial. Purple Haze, very low cavity spot. We knew it was going to be resistant. This one is interesting. This was the most resistant orange carrot. In the end here, in the breeding program, N means that it's also nematode resistant. So we had low levels in an orange carrot, and this is another line of the same carrot, also relatively low for cavity spot. We're always really happy when the lines show similar resistance. The others, the pale orange carrots, are all the breeding lines, just numbered. The darker orange are cultivars. So you'll be familiar with Cello Bunch. Envy is usually a bit more susceptible than Cello Bunch. The honey snacks and uppercut, the cut and peel carrots, do tend to be a little bit more susceptible. Atomic Red was susceptible, but there were also a couple of very highly susceptible carrots in this line. It's always good to have a few of these that are susceptible. That shows that the Pythium organisms are present and helps to reassure us that it is a good test of resistance. So I thought you might like to look at this promising carrot that's got resistance to cavity spot in addition to some resistance to nematodes. Now I have to mention that this isn't resistant to the northern root knot nematode, which is the one that we're dealing with in Ontario. But these are not bad looking carrots, especially compared to some of the other breeding lines. Another way of looking at the data, here we have the disease severity that we just saw in the graph. And here are the leaf blight ratings and the percent forking. So purple haze, of course, very low severity, not much leaf blight, low forking, but it wasn't surprised that it bolts. So our two nematode resistant lines, fortunately, they're also pretty resistant to leaf blight. Moderate for forking and no bolting. These other numbers are also quite resistant to cavity spot, but they're starting to get up there in terms of the amount of leaf blight that develops. And this is the worst, if you will, the most susceptible line. So severity is 51. It did have high leaf blight, but low forking. So we were wondering if, because Pythium root dieback and cavity spot are both caused by Pythium fungi, they're not fungi, Pythium organisms, although not the same species, if there might be a relationship, if we could find resistance to cavity spot and forking. And unfortunately, when we ran the stats, the short answer was no. This is cavity spot from 0 to up to 60 in one of our reps, and forking. The good news was that there were a number of lines that had low cavity spot and low forking, but we had some that were high as well. So no consistency overall, but some potentially good news here for breeding. So to summarize this section, we did have a good trial in 2020, pretty good disease pressure. We were able to identify some orange breeding lines with low cavity spot and low leaf blight. So that's good for moving forward with the breeding program. No direct relationship between low cavity spot and low forking, but again, some lines that could be useful for breeding. And as I mentioned, all of this information goes into the USDA breeding program, which will breed carrots that are useful for Ontario as well as California. So you've already been reminded a number of times that our results are written up and will soon be online. And I want to acknowledge the funding from the Bradford Co-op, the Fresh Vegetable Growers of Ontario, and the California Carrot Advisory Board. And I'm hoping there might be time for a couple of questions.
Thank you, Mary Ruth. Any questions? I don't see any currently in the chat.
It's the end of the day, so that might not be too surprising.
Okay. If
Yeah,
there are,
sorry, Kevin, if I can just mention again that thanks to Dennis Van Dyke for also doing the technical portion of this, and for Kevin for chairing our session. And we'll have the Onion Day tomorrow, again, starting at 12:30. Back to you, Kevin, if there's anything else you wanted to add.
no, I was just going to reiterate that. We'll see everybody 12:30 tomorrow afternoon. Thank you and have a good day.
Thanks, everybody.
Really understand how the brand is
Good to go?
Hey,
Here.
what does Brenda want?
I'll kick out Unky Doug too.
Hello, Brenda.
Well, anything to change for tomorrow?
No, I don't think so.
Thanks, Charlie. Oh, it's Charlie. Charlie was on.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I figured that was.
I just put everybody in the waiting room, and then they can quit when they want.
Oh, okay.
When you get back to their computers.
Right.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, no, it seemed to go fine.
Yeah, I
Except
think that went well.
we're trying to play the video.
No, that was all good.
I don't know why you don't have that thing in advance. That's weird. I wonder what the difference is.
Yeah, and then I can't see anything. Like when I played that video, that took up the whole screen. So when I couldn't touch it or else it would close. So
yeah, that's why it's nicer when you have the video option in advance, because then like it's not even full screen. It's full screen for you, but it's just like a little box on my computer.
Right.
And then Zoom does the compression, so it plays better through that way too. I don't know why there'd be difference in who has that option, but maybe it's a computer thing. Oh, my computer sucks, so I don't know. That doesn't explain it either.
Yeah.
I think that went well though. Everything.
Yeah. I realized that Dennis was on the talking all the time. Should have moved something. Shouldn't have, I think, yeah. I don't think it worked.
Beets at the end.
Yeah.
Beets at the end.
Or I don't know if it had to be today anyways, but
I was like, oh, I'm good. And then I look at the thing. It's like, oh, after Chantal. Oh, it's me. Oh, crap.
yeah. So, yeah, I think that ran a little bit long, but after that, I think we just lost our break pretty much. But
Yeah, sorry. I
no,
think
that's okay.
Yeah, that was me on both occasions.
I probably should have given you.
How much was I over though? Because I don't know how accurate my thing was. How much was I over? Like 3 minutes on the cover crops?
Well, I think we got a little bit behind, so you didn't start at 140. So that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I pushed it maybe a minute or a few behind.
Yeah, you know what? The survey took longer because the survey was up
Right.
for like 2.5
Right.
minutes, and you took the whole time. So then the survey pushed it over.
Right.
So that that sucks that it was anonymous.
Yeah, sorry. I'm gonna change, or I can't change it. Still, I can't change it. And I don't think it was. Can I do it now? Or you're all here? Try something. I'm gonna remove your co-host.
Okay.
Tell me if you can. I say the results, right? Yeah, I'm gonna relaunch the polling. Tell me if you can select multiple things for number 4. Question 4.
I'm still a co-host.
Yeah.
Oh, number 4 is just one.
Shit. Dumbass. What a waste.
Should we let these people in the waiting room if they want to ask a question?
No, they just left their computer and they just leave it there. They'll leave when they.
Okay.
Shit, that's what I was worried about. That's stupid.
It's not too bad because there's only those 2 questions, which were what it was like. You change your when you spray or what you spray, and then the other one was.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I would have liked to people been able to select both. Like.
Yeah, but it's still useful. It's still good, I think.
Let's see this.
Okay.
Filter. Here, I'll do this.
Yeah.
Oh, here.
Yeah. Well, we definitely have pricing for just spots.
Extension, grower in Ontario, grower in the Holland Marsh. Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. That's like a third.
Yeah. I think it said something like around 30%.
9 people. That's and 10 industry reps. I think that's so grower in Ontario. Would they want the thing? No, but I would like to. I would like you. Yes, once per week. Yes, daily, once every few weeks. So even if you're not in the marsh, you're still checking in on what you guys do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
See that?
Just for that one.
People outside
That's
are
good.
not, and they'd like to, but I don't care about them.
Yeah.
That's good. That's
Well,
good
and even
news.
the industry reps, look at a bunch of them are multiple times a week.
No, but I'd like to.
Right.
Yeah. Yes. Damn it! I can't believe it's anonymous. I'm so annoyed. I was even on my list to check, and I was like,
I thought we changed it last week, or did it change?
I thought so too, but I must have changed it back, or I didn't save the changes.
Oh.
I did change it. I changed it to off anonymous because we were on.
Maybe it reverts back or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I must not have saved it.
So there was like 30 people, wasn't there?
That responded? Yeah,
33.
33 responses.
So that was, it was like there's like 80 people on then, but then like 10 people didn't have access. Like we didn't have like Shawn and Mary through all co-hosts. So
Right.
Yeah, so I should change this to not available too, right? Not applicable.
yeah,
What do you
that
mean?
probably should have another option.
Yeah, if you're an
not
industry
a
rep,
grower.
then it should be not a grower.
Oh, okay.
And this is all relevant. This is all relevant. Twitter, face-to-face, email, all email. Website, grower in the marsh. Grower in the marsh. Email, text, face-to-face, email.
We'll be paying for this
Yeah.
forever.
Well, someone picked everything.
Yeah,
Mhm.
A couple people, or like one person picked Twitter, Facebook,
yeah.
or face to face.
Well, it's something. It's something to put in the proposal. You can make that look. You can pull a lot of stuff out of there, I think.
Well,
For sure.
that's just what we want, that we actually did something, right? So
Yeah. And it's also good to see too that for the most part, it looks like they prefer email, and we've been doing email the whole time. So
yeah,
that's good.
yeah.
I think so. Oh, we're still recording. Can I stop it?